Good morning. We will call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is now open for public attendance in person. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you have submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak, as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note, this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair, as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
I'd like to add that we do the ensuring landowners remain whole in contractual agreements with oil and gas companies to the agenda as 2.3.2.
Thank you, Councillor Lawerson. So that's a resolution from the Ag Services Board. We had passed a motion at our previous ASB meeting that we would put forward a resolution at the ASB convention for consideration as an emergent resolution. And there was, I'd need to double check, there's either a second motion or it was a two-part motion, also requesting that council put it forward to RMA for the spring convention. That is in our package for tomorrow in the minutes. You can review that. And as well, the resolution that Councillor Lawerson referenced is also there, and staff are just putting it into the format for submission to District 2 for RMA. The deadline is today, is why we are addressing this today. So, and we can give time for council to review that resolution if you haven't reviewed your package for tomorrow when we get there. Any other additions or changes? A motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Lawerson, any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We had the minutes circulated from the Wheatland County Committee of the Whole, December 14th. Any errors or omissions?
Also moved.
Councillor Bigger has moved approval. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We also had the minutes circulated from the Wheatland County regular council meeting from December 21st. Any errors or omissions?
I'll move to adopt the minutes from the regular council meeting, December 21st.
Councillor Laprise has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We also had the minutes circulated from the Wheatland County public hearing from December 21st. Any errors or omissions?
If there aren't any, I'll move the minutes.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.31, request to ratify meeting attendance regarding fire associations.
Madam Reeve, I'll defer to Councillor Larson to take the lead on this.
Thank you.
So this has come up to me that we have to have approval, and it has to be ratified by council to attend meetings. I know there's 2 fire associations in my division. I think there's 1 or 2 in your division and Glenn's division as well. So I would like to just have us make a motion that we get a per diem for attending fire association meetings. I don't know what's been done in the past, but
Go ahead, Councillor Custer.
I was under the impression that it's being in the organizational chart that if you attend those meetings, it is part of your committee work. I've never had a motion to attend an association meeting.
Yeah, and when administration, I just asked what, this wasn't like the context for this. And that was where it was a gray area for me as well, because at the organization meeting, we do assign like the councillor of the area to the fire association committee. But we can, whatever council's will is, yep.
But if you look at because I had Shanna send me the sheet, and it's not listed on that sheet, so therefore technically not allowed.
Okay.
Paid for it.
Okay.
So I think we just need to add it, and then going forward, I would suggest that we
can review
add
that
to
for the
every
organizational
meeting.
meeting.
When we review that. I think it was an omission this year, because if I remember right, looking on the one from 2021 that was on that, but it somehow got missed on this meeting.
Okay. Questions or, you put a motion on the floor to ratify attendance. Questions or discussion? Councillor Custer and then
Instead of
Councillor Baker.
ratifying attending the meetings, maybe we should make a motion to add it back onto the organizational chart.
That would solve it long-term.
Then it accomplishes the same thing, and then it's on the chart.
I would agree with that.
Does administration have any comments?
Yes, I would agree with that, and a friendly amendment perhaps, or something to that effect would go for that. Yeah.
Councillor Baker?
So as fire association meetings, the counselor is appointed to that meeting? I did not know that.
I think I have an old one. I'll just pull it up. Any other questions or discussion?
Because we have an association, Carsland, and I have never been involved in it. Okay, I'll find out.
Yeah, and I don't in my area, like unless I'm having,
Unless Gleason or Clooney have one.
Clooney has dissolved.
Carsland has an association now, and I've never known that was to be on that association.
I don't think it's customary to go like to all of the meetings. Wrong one. I'm just pulling up an old committee sheet. Yes, Councillor Kester.
In the past, every fire department had an association, and the county funded the association. That's why it was part of. Over the years, there has been some of the associations have folded and given the responsibilities to the county, but there are still on the east side of the county associations. If you have an association it's truly an association in Carsland, I don't have a problem with it. It's fire. It's a way to get the firefighters and the counselor. But it's not funded in the same way. But
No,
it's
it's
still,
not, no.
it's information too. Fire is an important part of what we do. I don't have a problem with that either. If it's a
So on our 2020-21 organizational meeting, like the list of committees, it did list Fire Protection Committee, and then it just said local councillors. So I don't know if we want clarity around parameters, like of frequency of attendance or something like that. I think we want to be balanced. Deputy Reed Clausen?
Review it, because I think we stepped away from that because before we had a fire chief and a deputy fire chief. We have staff there now that do most of this stuff, and trying to keep the counselors away from that.
associations are different. Associations aren't not the fire department. Some cases they are the same people, but the association collects the
So-
money and pays the bills.
So like Carsland is staffed through county. It's a county fire department, but it still has an association where it collects monies from Carsland.
They've done
from the
substantial
groups and-
fundraising.
Yeah. So it still has an association.
And in the past, I've only went to the meetings when invited. They have particular questions of the county.
Councillor Larson and then Deputy CAO.
Yeah, I'm just going by what Ben did now. The Hussar Fire Association meets every other month, and Ben always went to that. Dallin, for example, typically only holds practices, but they have an annual general meeting, and they're independent associations, so that's kind of what I was speaking to. I think they're separate and distinct from the county-run ones.
It might be good, I'm just thinking, well, we'll go to Deputy CAO Gary Ellen then.
And that is correct. I was just going to provide that clarification that Councillor Larson provided as well. I mean, ultimately, councillors, you can attend the association meetings ultimately, but as it stands right now, there is no per diem or payment in the rest. So that's up to council to, with that in mind, those types of associations specific to what you attended, Councillor Larson, if council so chooses to receive payment or a per diem or something like that, the motions that were put on the floor would work. But that's the distinguishment, and I believe that's the distinguishment that you're alluding to, correct, Councillor Larson? Yes. Okay. And ultimately, just for clarity, our staff don't attend those. So our manager, Chief Borgon, Deputy Chief, do not attend the association meetings. They do attend, in fact, we do have quarterly chief meetings, just for council's information. And of course, we meet 2 times a year for the capital meetings as well. So as council's aware, we have those capital meetings, which in fact, associations do attend. So just for that distinguishment, I wanted to provide that clarification. So we have chief meetings, where the staff, and then we have association meetings, which is that distinguishment there. I just wanted to provide that clarification, Madam Reeve.
So just a further clarifying question, because I didn't apparently attend to it. I don't recall Councillor Armstrong reporting on association meetings regularly. Does anyone know, was he doing a per diem? Are you aware? I don't know either.
I know he sent me he actually called me the day of the first meeting because I didn't know about it, and he said, "Why are you not here?"
Yeah. Yeah. This may be, I do kind of have mixed feelings on it because, like, recognizing we don't have staff at the associations, but I guess then looking at the governance role, and I see what Councillor Custer's saying, like around the funding and that type of thing. Councillor Custer?
You can look at my timesheets. I don't think I've ever been to a Rosebud Association meeting. They're part of their training meetings, and they pass their own budgets. And I'll go to the Rocky Ford one, not every year. It's usually when they get their audited statement, or if they have any troubles with. We used to have more troubles with getting the statement in the correct format for the county, but that's all been cleared up. So I go in frequently for my 2 fire departments. I know Ben probably went a lot more than I did. I don't know if he put it on his per diem or not. And as far as the rest of the councillors, I don't know. I think Jason went to Standard, but I believe he was a member of the Standard Fire Department, so that's a little bit different too. But yeah, that's the way it's always been a committee on the councillor, on the committee thing, and this year I guess it got missed or slipped or whatever. I kind of remember talking about it in council to take it off. But I know half of the associations are gone now from what they originally were. Sounds like Carsland's got a startup one that are doing whatever they want to do, right? And that's totally up to them. But in the past, the association was the only link the council had to the fire departments. Some of the associations are the fire department. In Rocky Ford's case, the association is not the fire department. There's the Rocky Ford Fire Department, which they 100% support, but there is a link to it. So every one is different. Azar is slightly different than Rocky Ford, and Standard is different too. You got the villages involved, but you never had a meeting with the villages. They might be there in another capacity. It has evolved over time for sure. Yeah.
So hearing this, I'd like to first have a review as to see what was done in the past. We don't know for sure. And then make a decision from there. I don't think I can make a decision today on it without knowing what was charged in the past and then what we want to do in the future. Yeah, because I think of some stuff I go into in my division that it isn't fire association thing, but there's HOA stuff. I don't charge for any of that. I go, but it has direct, relationships with the county members and stuff. So
Yeah, like Ag Society meetings and stuff
yeah,
like that.
I don't charge for any of that.
And that's what I did say just when I was chatting with Deputy CEO Boscariel, that was my recollection when there was an association in my division. I did just quickly, I was able to find, and I think I had mentioned to Rick, I had attended a Dallin Fire Association meeting in November of 2020 with Councillor Armstrong at their request and his request, and it was no charge on my timesheet, just as like a community event. But it's worth having that discussion. I think it would be good just to get like some firm information about historical, how it's been handled. I'm not necessarily opposed to funding it. I do think it's important and a good way to liaison information. It's just maybe some parameters around, is it monthly, every other month? Is it once a year, like for the AGM? That was an AGM that we went to. It was really informative just to hear about the history and the financial context of the association, the incredible efforts of that community to fundraise, and what they've done to contribute to fire service in that area was phenomenal. So there was certainly value in that. But Deputy CAO Boscariel.
Absolutely. So just through the Reeve, just to circle back, we do have a motion on the floor. And ultimately, if council so chooses to table this and we can bring back some additional information, we could certainly do that. And then ultimately as well, the topic is basically getting a per diem or a payment to attend meetings, not necessarily the attendance, but as I had mentioned, we ultimately council does have the liberty to attend association meetings. So with that in mind as well, we could put some additional information together to Deputy Reeve Klassen's request, but I'll leave that to council's deliberations. But I just wanted to bring it back that there is a motion on the floor at the current moment. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Yes.
So just being new, how does it work if we go to a seed cleaning co-op meeting then? Do you get a per diem for that? Because this would in effect be the same thing.
Yeah, so I should confirm the current list. Those typically were assigned to the councillor of the area at the organizational meeting. Resolutions were not required for those historically, and there were per diems. There are other meetings though where we just would bring like I'm trying to think of an example. There could be a meeting that there was a good example. Last month there was that meeting around the twin ice arenas that we were requested to attend, and so council passed a resolution like ratifying my attendance at that meeting on behalf of council. So one-offs tend to be dealt with like that. Associations, I think, like philosophically, if we're going to fund them, I think it would make sense to put it in the organizational meeting. We can always review that annually at the organizational meeting each year to determine like if there's still a governance role there. So,
I would be okay to amend the motion saying that we add it to the organizational chart too, if that's what council wishes. It's not a huge deal to me. I just need clarification so that I
Totally.
can put stuff in a timesheet and then have Shannon tell me, no, you can't bill for
yes,
that.
totally.
I don't see much difference between the seed plant and the association. Both of them are, the associations were heavily funded by the county, and there's a couple of associations now actually have loans out from the county. They're just part of. The associations draw a lot of money from the county yearly, and it's just a committee of the association. Depends how they conduct their business, I guess. Council's never had any directive on a format for that, and I would suggest get involved in it. Just leave them alone. Things are functioning quite well the way they are, right? Where they submit their associations, I don't want to get too deep in it, they're all have to submit an audited financial statement to the Alberta government to retain their license, their ability to function. And the county requires that yearly. So these are structured associations that maintain their license, so to say. So yeah, I support if you have to go to association meeting and they have spending things. All the associations, or a lot of them, have built fire halls. They had to fund them. The county's put in significant money into them. It's part of being prudent, being there for your ratepayers. Not much different than other committees, the way I look at it. I realize not every division has a fire association anymore. It's evolved to what it is. And maybe some of the divisions never had a fire association. But they still have fire coverage, and the county's divvied up into maps, and it's functioning really well. Yeah, just...
So I did hear Deputy Reeve Clausen said you would like some more information before considering the decision. We would have an option under our procedure bylaw to do a motion to postpone to a certain time or date, if that were something that you might want to consider even to the next meeting. And then we could bring back the information on historical. It doesn't mean we necessarily have to follow or continue how it was done historically. There could be a rationale for altering that, but we would have that contextual information. My preference is always if you would like more information, if we could ensure that we have that for consideration. Yes.
Madam Reeve, also, at the will of Councillor Larson, you can also withdraw your motion, and then we can get additional information if that's the way
That is another
to
option.
proceed,
Yeah.
but that's an option as well.
When the information comes back, you could put another motion on the floor for consideration. Yes.
What does everybody else think? I'm happy to withdraw it if people want more information.
Withdraw it or table it, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Put it at the table of it.
Either one, I think, is effective at ensuring that the information that's requested is there. So information we'd be looking for would just be historically sort of whether per diems were paid for, association meeting attendance, and just, I am curious just around frequency of meetings, and recognizing that there's diversity amongst the associations within the county.
Just to be clear, what information are we asking for?
That's what I was just trying to summarize. So I said whether per diems were paid historically, and not necessarily that we need to follow what was done historically, just that will give some context. And then for me, it's just relevant how many meetings each association holds per year.
It'll give me time actually to find out whether...
Finalize, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. And then, there's nothing stopping from any of us from if we go to something and to come here and ask for that particular time, date, and place for per diem reimbursement. And if there was an invite attached to it too, it comes with a lot of power, I guess it would be, you know. It is expensive to go to places now. I realize you got a lot of driving to do in your division. Totally respect that, and I understand, but, you know, is it return on investment? Is it worthwhile? What have we done in the past? Just that whole thing. Nothing against you at all.
No, I didn't think it was.
Yeah.
No, and I know where you're coming from. It's a clarity thing. Like, there's nothing worse than sitting there and like entering your information into your timesheet and not knowing what's appropriate or what's, yeah. So I think long-term clarity is important.
For sure.
Yeah, so there's essentially the two ways. You can either withdraw your motion or you could do a motion to postpone, whichever your preference is. And you can either postpone to a certain time or date or indefinitely.
I will just withdraw the motion and then ask staff to bring information forward for the next meeting, and we can put it on the agenda then.
Okay. So I don't believe we need to vote when the mover of the motion withdraws the motion. Just reading. Yeah, I had not stated the motion, so I think we're okay.
Yes, we are.
Well, it might be prudent to just do a motion directing administration to bring this information back to a future council meeting, just so that it's easy to track.
I'll move that.
Okay. And in that summary, is that the information that we're looking for? Any information that we're missing? That's it.
Just for clarity, Madam Reeve and Council, the motion would be specific to the fire associations. So
Yes.
is that just
Yes.
specific to? Okay. So we'll bring back information pertaining to councillor per diem or attendance to fire associations, including the frequency, history, per diems paid for associations, and the number of times per year.
Perfect.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
There's a new motion on the floor. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We had an addition to the agenda, 2.32, the resolution from ASB.
Good morning. Thank you.
Hi, Happy New Year.
Morning, Les. Thank you.
Morning. Sticky, eh? Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah.
Would council like a 5-minute recess and we could review the documents?
Yes, please.
I'm saying yes. So we will recess and we will reconvene at 9:35, just so everybody has time to review the document.
Thank you.
I think, though, the question of pecuniary interest, that is good to consider outside of council, I think would be appropriate.
Mute off.
We'll call the
I
meeting
also
back to
have a
order.
well or two, but we're not asking for compensation here. We're asking for a return to the process. It's a process type thing. I don't think it's a conflict of interest. It's a community thing we're asking to be made as in the past, really. We're not asking for money. We're just asking for a fair process.
So administration has prepared a resolution based on the presentation and discussion at the ASB meeting. Russ, good morning.
Morning, Council. Russ Montrath from Administration. So if you recall, the November 10th ASB meeting, we had the Wheatland and Area Surface Rights Group in. 2 members from that group came to speak to us in regards to the possibility of doing a resolution. So we were directed to do work with the group to do a resolution, one to bring forward to the ASB meeting, which is tomorrow, so we could take to provincial ASB conference as an emergent resolution, and then bring to council so it could go to RMA District 2 as well. And I believe because of the deadline today, that's why we're here with this resolution before ASB. So the group did meet together numerous times to work on this resolution. I met with them once to give them my suggestions as far as the outline and any thoughts that I have or had on it. And this is what they came up with. So the recommendation is to move approval for submission of the ensuring landowners remain whole in contractual agreements with oil and gas companies resolution to the Rural Municipalities of Alberta 2022 District 2 Spring General Meeting for consideration. One thing to note, I did have one of the members, Ken Sauvé, was going to come to ASB tomorrow just to speak to any questions that the group may have regarding the resolution, but it's there before you, so hopefully if there is some questions, I'll be able to answer them for you.
Any questions?
Russ, I have a question. Do you know if this issue, how far beyond wheatland it goes? Is it a District 2 or is it a province of Alberta issue? Is it everywhere or is it regional?
I can't say for sure. I know there is, within wheatland, there is specific companies. And I know that's like with the wording, they said certain companies, just to ensure that, you know, we weren't talking about all energy companies in the province. So for this area, it is, like I said, I think it's one or two companies specifically that are causing issues. Provincially, I'm not sure. I think there is, you know, issues province-wide, but to what extent, I can't say.
There's in Alberta, like we have a local ratepayers associate, or like a surface rights advocacy group. There is an Alberta-wide surface rights group as well. I don't follow it closely, but I have read, and just through discussions with mayors and reeves across the province, I have heard that this is an issue in other areas of the province. There is some historical advocacy from RMA. It was more around sort of 2005 to 2007, so it's all expired, but it was previously a provincial issue as well. Just a little bit further, the best way to determine that too is if council does approve sending this forward, it goes to District 2 for consideration, and we get a good sense of, in our district, if this resonates as a priority advocacy issue. Good morning. And then of course it would go to convention, and obviously it would be weighed there. Councillor Eichert.
Is there a definition of what in good faith is? Like, is there?
I think under the surface rights.
What I would assume would be good faith, but I don't know if there is. That's totally different. Like if I'm negotiating with an oil company in good faith, it's probably slightly different in what they're thinking is good faith. I'm just wondering, is there legalese for in good faith? Is that a?
I'm just looking at the act quickly. If there's other questions, please.
Through the Reeve, just to council, just a quick glance at the Surface Rights Act. It just talks about good faith, but there's it just kind of elaborates on that in another section when parties agree. Now, there's no expansion or subsections under negotiating in good faith. But one would assume through reading the legislation that that's what it means in terms of negotiating, parties agree, etc. But within the Surface Rights Act, I don't see any elaboration on that term.
I have a few things. So reading through this in the resolution, there's been wording like illegal methods a couple of times in here. And I don't have any justification to know if that's real or not. So I can't support that being in there.
You just reference Where?
In the resolution, 1, 2, 3, whereas certain oil and gas companies have used illegal methods to pressure landowners, and then in the paragraph, a couple pages back, certain oil and gas companies have used illegal methods to further pressure landowners. I don't have knowledge of that. I can't say that's true. I don't know.
So this was developed by our surface rights group. If you go to the member background on the second page, third paragraph from the top, starting with misleading and intimidating tactics. And then the second sentence says, these tactics include, but are not limited to, aggressive written and verbal communications, attempts to force landowners to accept compensation for smaller acreage than is in their original leases, threats of quasi-legal action if signing is not completed, and implying that signing will prevent bankruptcy or orphaned wells that would further disadvantage the landowner. In addition, unilateral attempts to change compensation to reflect net as opposed to gross values and not returning to repeated landowner calls or emails regarding negotiation has also occurred.
So this has been prepared by our staff?
In consultation.
Through the chair, I met with the Wheatland and Area Surface Right group once and had some phone conversation. It was primarily put together by them because they had the knowledge, around the situation. I was happy with that because I didn't have enough experience to speak to it. We did talk about the illegal part some within the meetings, and I think the group felt that that was an important component to have in there. As well, I think the good faith part, from my understanding, there is no negotiations, or there really hasn't been. So that's the issue, right? And I don't know, Madam Reeve, if it would be appropriate. We do have a member here. If there is some further details the group requires, if it would be appropriate to have them speak to it.
I think at council's discretion, we certainly could if the Surface Rights Board member is willing to. So Ken, we're discussing the resolution regarding the surface rights. Yeah, so it's good timing that you're here for our next appointment. It would be at council's will if we have questions. Yes, Councillor Kester.
I don't have a problem with Ken speaking, but for me, and I believe just about, good faith is the same as being honest. When you negotiate in good faith, you tell the truth. I mean, I think it's just, for me, it's as plain as can be. When you negotiate in good faith, if you go back to that paragraph 3, and you're threatened, or you're lied to, or you're told inconsistent data, coerced, that is not good faith. I think that's plain. I don't know what else you would call it, except if you wanted to replace good faith and honesty, integrity, I think they're all the same. It's a word that means good faith. I don't know what else. I don't know, unless, Ken, you have anything else you want to say to that? Or you'll have to come up and use the mic, I'm sorry. My hearing hasn't improved since you left.
Did we vote on?
Do we need a motion for that?
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to ask Ken to come.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Oh, opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, motion is carried.
Some people might say don't get them started on this subject.
So Ken, if you just
but I
wanna,
think
if you can just say your name just for the record.
Okay,
just for
Ken Sullivan, I'm a director on the Wheatland Surface Rights Group. I forget what exactly the name of it is, but that's where I'm speaking from right now. And in regards to good faith, I don't think that means that means just sit down and have a respectful conversation. You don't have to agree on topics. You don't even have to like each other, but it means to be able to carry the negotiation forward, and that's really been lacking with the oil companies in the area. we can't even get them to answer phone calls, let alone sit down to make the decisions. And excuse me, in regards to the other one about being how was that asked, illegal? Did you? That was determined with a lot of conversation at our meetings, that they actually not only paying a portion of what the contract says by the date that it's supposed to be paid is illegal. That's breaking the law. And so that's why we debated whether to put it in there quite thoroughly, and it was determined that that's why it's in there, because actually what they are doing by not paying, or paying only 50% or 40% or whatever the percentage of the agreement, that's breaking the law. And that, I do believe, is before the Queen's Bench now are supposed to be on that direction, headed that way for them to make the decision on that. So, if there's any other questions?
I guess just one more, Ken. This isn't just localized in Wheatland County, is it? I'm thinking it goes past our borders.
I believe we have members that are outside of Wheatland County, yes, but the majority of it is being dealt with from within Wheatland County. I know there's other organizations now. There's one, I believe, now Tabor and that, but we haven't, outside of having meetings with the MLAs and the minister, we haven't gone outside of the borders too much. Yeah. We call it Wheatland County, and so that's kind of why we're bringing it to you guys and through the Ag Service Board to carry it forward to this resolution.
I think Councillor Kester was referencing if the issue is more of like a specific only to wheatland, or if the issue is more broadly being experienced by landowners in Alberta.
I believe two of the culprits, two of the oil companies, two of the worst ones are here, from what I understand, and there is other ones that are, I guess, following the same path, but the main ones are mainly in Wheatland County and outside. I know there's some up around Three Hills and stuff like that. So,
any other questions for Mr. Sauvé?
thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
So I'm not opposed to what the group has done. I totally get what they're trying to do. The struggle I have is this is a private negotiated contract with a landowner and a company that the county had no prior knowledge of what that agreement said in any way, shape, or form. We were never involved in it. It was always between party A, party B. We were not out of it. So now a resolution comes forward, which I totally understand. I get what they're coming from. But we're saying that there's illegal methods, and our staff have reviewed it. And if our staff are putting our name on it, what liability is that putting on us? If it was coming from the group themselves and they were the signatory on the document, that's a different thing. But when our staff have done this, we assume that we are believing this. And I don't have any proof of that. I have words, I have no proof. And I'm not going to put myself in that situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. What if we were to consider an amendment for the fourth, and whereas certain oil and gas operators have allegedly used illegal?
It has to be, yeah.
Does that...
I can't say whether that's going to be any different. I'm not a legal person. My spider sense is tingling here, so I have to kind of think, is this the right thing to do? Should this go back for review? Unless our name is completely off this document, that's different. And then further to that, when you talk about a private contract between parties, there are several people at this table that have financial interest involved in this. And that is concerning to me, because if this goes through, it will change what income they're getting from that, which is fine, but this is not county business in that regard. It's a hard thing to ask. I don't like doing it, but I have to. So.
But are we not speaking on behalf of our ratepayers?
Yeah.
And don't we always do that, though?
But when you vote for it, it could become, it has to be judged by yourself as pecuniary interest, because there's several people that have admitted here that they have land that this will affect. So just be careful.
So I guess I would, and not being in a position where I'm directly impacted by this, when I look at the therefore be it resolved that Alberta Municipal Affairs and Alberta Energy mandate that oil and gas operators be required, as has occurred historically, to pay costs related to contractual negotiations with oil and gas operators and land and property rights tribunal proceedings to ensure that landowners remain whole, and further be it resolved that Alberta Municipal Affairs and Alberta Energy mandate that mediation be mandatory and in good faith prior to all Section 27 applications to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. I don't think you could draw the conclusion that people's payments would necessarily be increased based on the advocacy, because the advocacy is more towards the process and the fact that we have landowners who are in an expropriation context in terms of surface rights. And that's why, like, the Surface Rights Act exists. We don't have an act, well, I shouldn't say that. Though individual contracts would be private, to me this speaks more to issues more broadly with the Surface Rights Act and how it's being applied in Alberta with landowners. And because Wheatland County, our sort of foundational industry is agriculture, and because the expropriation relationship between oil and gas directly impacts our ag producers' ability to, whether it's grazing or crop production, that land use, like the oil and gas use, directly impacts our ag producers. And then it also impacts like the long-term sustainability of some of our farms if this is like a secondary source of income, or not a secondary source of income, but a source of income that is designed to offset the loss of income for the loss of their land where that use has changed to oil and gas. To me, it's a larger issue, and where I see it pertinent, because I did question, is this a municipal governance issue? And we discussed it a little bit at ASB. Where I see it is because we are fundamentally an agriculturally based municipality, and it's our primary industry, and it's impacting that industry. Councillor Gester.
Also, I don't know how many wells are left in the county. I know at one time I did a presentation, I believe there was 14,000. I defy anyone here to go anywhere in the county, there are a few places, and look around and not see evidence of disturbance of oil and gas company, be it a well, pipeline. They have 3-4 times more miles of pipeline than we have roads. They've impacted virtually every quarter section in the county. This is huge for Wheatland County. Wheatland County is one of the most affected counties in the province, oil and gas. We, Surface Rights Board, are asking a return to what was the standard when these contracts were negotiated. Things have eroded, not because of the lobbying of Wheatland County or the ratepayers here. They've eroded for, I won't say, other interests. And all they're asking for is a return to and some help from the Alberta government to level this playing field to the way it was before. I can tell you all kinds of little stories that it affected me, and I'm sure you ask any farmer in the county and they'll have the same stories. We've been affected, and our ability to return to what was once when we negotiated is restrained. We're not asking for money. We're just asking for a level playing field, and I can't see how that is a pecuniary interest. Maybe it is. I'll take my chance on it. I'm sticking up for the ratepayers of the county. The farmers are our vast people in the county. We farm from post to post, as the saying goes. And I don't have a problem with it. I don't know if you're looking for a motion to proceed with this. If you are, I'll make that motion that we endorse this resolution and take it to the district and let them debate it there. But this is something our largest industry in the county is asking for. And I don't know if you can find a producer in the county that would say no to it.
I'll just add a little further to that, and I understand where Scott's coming from, because I had exactly the same concerns when I read this document. But if we go back to what Amber said, where we look at what is strictly the resolutions, I don't think that those are particularly problematic. And we have a layer of protection, because this has to then go to the RMA and to the Provincial Ag Service Board. So if they see something that's not right, then there's another chance to do that. So I think this is probably okay. Like I said, I was very uncomfortable with the use of the word illegal, because when you start saying that, you better be able to back it up. And that's why I asked Ken, and he said if it is already before the Court of Queen's Bench, then you have a basis for saying it, and it's in the background, it's not in the actual resolution. And I'll just read from Macmillan Law, just to Tom's question about good faith. The Supreme Court of Canada recognized that good faith contractual performance is a general organizing principle of Canadian common law, and that all parties to a contract are under a duty to act honestly in the performance of their contractual obligations.
So a couple of good points have been made. This will go to District 2 for consideration by the 14 municipalities that are represented there. I would not be opposed to asking administration's opinion on just inserting the word allegedly in the second, third, and fourth whereas. And then we're recognizing that that's what we're being told by the Surface Rights Group. But as Wheatland County Council, we're qualifying it, that we haven't necessarily put forward specific examples. I shouldn't say that. There are specific examples in the member background. But I guess to Deputy Reeve Clausen's point, we haven't necessarily verified those, if you will. So I might be more comfortable to just insert the word allegedly, which I think would qualify those statements in such a way that I'm more comfortable. At council's will, of course.
There's a motion on the floor, I guess.
I think you said you will make the motion. If we're looking for one, do you want to do that now?
I don't have a problem with the document the way it is. If you're looking for proof, I don't know what you want for proof. I'll make the motion that we support this resolution. For me personally, the whereases are whereases. I am more concerned with, therefore it be resolved. That's what the motion is. That's what we're asking for. The whereases are background information, more or less. That's no different much than the rest of it says member background. In the member background, it says some of our farmers have been treated as such, and I can verify a lot of them stations. Personally, for me, it's different, maybe.
So I'm just
But
going
I'll make the
to,
motion the way it is.
you're going to make the motion
If
as it
somebody
is?
wants to amend it, go ahead.
If you're moving it as presented, I would propose an amendment just to include the word allegedly in the second, third, and fourth whereas, just before the word refusing in the second, before the word continue in the third, and just before the word used in the fourth, all in like the first line. Would you accept the amendment, or does it change I guess, do you guys want to vote on the amendment? Or do you want to accept it as friendly?
Madam Reeve, just to clarify, so the motion, the recommendation from administration in this RFD,
Approve the submission.
with amendments.
So Councillor Kester, are you making
So
The
clearly,
single
what are
sheet that
your
was sent.
amendments? Can I hear them again, please?
Yep. So just to read, I think what Deputy CAO Boscario wants to confirm is if you're making the motion that was recommended from administration, that council approve the submission of the ensuring landowners remain whole in contractual agreements with oil and gas companies resolution to the Rural Municipalities of Alberta 2022 District 2 Spring General Meeting for consideration. And then the amendments that I proposed were in the second, so where it says, and whereas certain oil and gas operators are requesting to insert allegedly refusing. In the third whereas, and whereas certain oil and gas operators allegedly continue to use misleading and intimidating. And in the fourth, and whereas certain oil and gas operators have allegedly used illegal methods.
You'll have to vote on it.
Okay. I will move to amend the motion. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So the motion is amended and we can vote on the amended motion. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. And my apologies to our ratepayers who are waiting, and I'm sorry that we are late. We do have a 10 o'clock appointment regarding a public input session regarding Township Road 232. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of council. Chris Perman, Senior Peace Officer here. I'm here today to present continuing information on our analysis of the Township 232 and speeds and other issues. So I'm not going to go through the information that was presented at the last meeting with statistics and so on and so forth. Nothing has been changed since that. What I will go through is in the RFD, as of November 16th, we were directed to engage with ratepayers regarding speeds that are on Township 232. And so administration then sent out a survey to the landowners within 1 mile of Township 232 between Highway 17, Highway 1, as well as we did an online survey that was county-wide. And the survey was closed December 19th, and we received 170 responses, that is both written and online. And the questions that we came up with were as follows. On the scale below, indicate how often you travel. Township 232, 0 being never, 5 being 1 per day, 10 being daily. 79 people said they were doing 10 times a day, down to 0, say 2, and the average, based on 170 responses, the average response was 8. The second question was if people were comfortable with the speed limit, and based on 169 responses, 40% said no, 60% said yes. Question 3 was asked if the speed limit to be changed, which would be in favor of, and A was to change the entire section of Township Road 232 to 80 kilometers an hour, change the entire section to 90 kilometers an hour, change the entire section to 100 kilometers an hour, or leave it at 100 kilometers an hour with the 180 kilometer an hour section. And on 168 responses, 100 said change the entirety to 100 kilometers. 28 people said leave it the way it is, 22 said to change it all the way to 80, and 18 all the way to 90. Some additional comments that came in there with that question. We did ask for additional comments, and some questions had lots, some questions didn't. But in that thing, that was felt that 100 kilometers for small vehicles and 80 kilometers for commercial traffic would be okay. 90 kilometers an hour, but drop to 80 in sections that are already posted. Prefer to see 60 kilometers an hour between 243 and 242 where homes are. That only the odd person passing high rate of speed, but no more than any other highway. Leave current 80 kilometers on in Hammer Hill Road, and then change it between 232 and 234 to 80 kilometers per hour. Question 4 was to rate or select which their safety concerns were road conditions, traffic volume, speed, or no concerns. And there was 162 responses to that, and 103 of them had no concerns, 19 had speed as concerns, 26 had traffic volumes, 14 had road conditions. And some additional comments on that were transport trucks should chain up on Hamlet Hill. Hammer Hill safety after snow events, increase in non-commercial traffic, speed, traffic volume, road conditions, line of sight, motorists not showing caution, respect around livestock and machinery moves, traffic volumes, commercial vehicle traffic. Road is excellent, no high traffic volumes, lots of time and visibility to enter onto road safely. Have been seeing a higher volume of big trucks along the road, not sure if they're trying to avoid scales. Speed should be monitored by cameras. Speed and traffic volumes and the increasing number of large trucks. Non-local commercial vehicles are a concern. Amount of commercial semi-trucks using to bypass the 901 80-kilometer section. A lot of heavy trucks, if they're overweight, it's going to deteriorate the road. Large volume of semis, a lot of transport trucks. Speed limit is reduced where population intensifies. This is logical and follows precedent set by others. No reason to alter. All three are valid concerns. All three are concerns: traffic volumes and speed, lack of speed enforcement, limits or fines those who not do obey. Semi-trucks using it as a shortcut, going way too fast, danger from excessive use by transport trucks, traffic and speed. Semi-trucks using 232 as a cutoff between Highway 1817 or vice versa, transport truck speed and insufficient sight lines. And question 5 was, were any additional comments with regards to speed and safety on that road? And there were 89 additional comments. I won't go through them all. They are as part of the agenda package in the last several pages, and I believe all the comments were placed in there for reading at that portion. So that was all the information we received. I did receive a couple of written submissions this morning as well that were sent last night, and one was mostly in favor of reducing the speed limit on the entirety of the road to 80, and one was to remain the way it was, is my understanding on it. And so, yeah, that's what we discovered out of that. That is all the information that I have that we've garnered from it, and I'm open to questions, or obviously we do have some people that have come in to speak to council regarding it.
Thank you very much. Our procedural bylaw does reference that council debate will take place at the conclusion of the public input session. But if there are any questions for officers, appropriate, right? Officer permit.
Yep. Just how long have we had the current speed situation like the?
I believe we've had it for about a year and a half. I'd have to just quickly go back to my notes here. It was changed, I believe it was changed last...
April 2019.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, April 2019, yes.
Okay. Have you been able to, is there any way, in that year and a half, can you extrapolate those, like, accidents and that kind of stuff on that since then? Has there been any increase? Has it sort of stayed the same? Like,
I was not able to get any collision information from the RCMP regarding that stretch of roadway. It was kind of a last-minute thought process, but we have not heard of many concerns. There obviously may have been some collisions or vehicles off-road and so on and so forth in the area, but I've not heard that there was a drastic increase nor decrease from before.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We do have, and administration can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we have 3 people registered to speak. Our procedure bylaw does reference that those who have registered to speak will speak first, and then anyone else who is in attendance will also have the opportunity to speak following those who are registered. The first person I have on the list under registered speakers is Ian Fields. The process will be, we'll just ask you to come to the microphone, state your name for the record, and then you can share your input with council. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, thank you. As it's been discussed here, there's been a step change in the use of this road. We've seen 2 step changes. We've seen a step change since the portion of the 232 was changed from gravel to tarmac. That was sort of supplemented last year for some reason. We've seen an increase in heavy goods, and we've also seen a lack of control of that speed. My wife, who's sitting over there, has almost been rear-ended by truck drivers who are using their phones and not paying attention to what they're doing. And it's quite a scary prospect. We have two main issues here. We have big trucking companies like 353 and Bison and Lightspeed who are using it as a shortcut, but we also have seasonal trucking with the stockyards. Now, they've always been there, but the gravel road was a deterrent to use it, and it also a speed control because they never used to speed like they do right now. There's supposed to be an 80-kilometre limit in the section that we live in. They're not doing 80 in there. There's no way on God's earth they're doing 80. You can actually time it, and you can see that they're doing way over 100. And they're on probably, I don't know, they're probably on some kind of bonus scheme in this period of time to how many loads they deliver. I don't know how it's structured, but all I know is that they're not paying any respect to the speed limit, the safety of the people that live on that road turning into their properties, or anything else. So I would motion that, I don't know, and I listened to the peace officer's report there, and he got 160 replies, but the main people that are infected by this are just those group of houses that's becoming a little hamlet there on its own, east of Namaka. And we're the ones that are impacted by this. We cannot sit at night with our windows open because we have trucks coming past. The noise pollution is incredible. And our house is set back, 150 foot from the road, and it's still invasive. You cannot sit with your windows open. You just can't. The quality of life has deteriorated beyond, I don't know how to describe it to you. It's awful. And this has all happened in two-step changes. One was when the gravel road changed, and one was when they changed the speed limit on the other road. Which road was it, Sue? The 901. They reduced the speed limit and enforced it on the 901. And so now we're becoming the Namaka Superhighway. That's what we are right now. Now, when the police or the peace officers enforce it, that's fine. It works for 10 minutes, whatever. Because these guys have all got communications, they can talk to each other. And the people actually get caught are probably the locals, because they don't have that communication. If you're going to keep the speed limits where they are, then it needs to be enforced, and we should put up temporary traffic lights or temporary speed cameras, maybe even permanent speed cameras, because that would deter them. It would either deter them from speeding or deter them from using the road itself, and that would reduce the volumes and reduce the problem. The other issue that we have is that the braking zones adjacent to the homes are too close, because you get the braking noise as they're approaching this reduction in speed. So they need widening out so that we don't get that pollution. Air brakes and stuff like that are very, very noisy. So anyway, that's my point. I say I think we have 14 homes in that area, and I think 8 of those have got children as well, which you've got school buses, you've got, as I say, you've got huge trucks. I don't know what the weight on those trucks is, but it must be 50 ton, I would think, if they've got 50 odd animals in there. So they don't stop quickly. They really don't. And as I said, my wife's almost been back-ended one time by guys not paying attention to what they're doing. And we don't move to the country to live on a main road. We didn't move there for that. It was peaceful, it was quiet. And now, as I say, it's become the Namaka Superhighway. So, and what we're asking for is some kind of protection from that. You know? So anyway, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Field. The next speaker we have registered is Ken Sovey. And I apologize, I did forget to mention, we do typically have a time limit for presentations, you're probably fully aware, of 10 minutes.
No, I wasn't aware.
Oh, well, my apologies. Under our procedure bylaw, we do have a 10-minute.
I wouldn't have spent so much time preparing this if I'd have known that ahead of time.
We can grant extensions.
Okay.
Under extenuating circumstances, council can vote if it exceeds 10 minutes for contentious or complex issues, which I would argue this is both complex and contentious, so.
Okay.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for that, and thanks for the opportunity to do this. But I guess the main concern is the danger of using that road now. And just to go back to do a little bit of history on, because I don't know whether everybody in here knows that I was a councillor for 9 years here, and I was here when that road was upgraded and paved. But just so we don't, and I've heard it, so we don't, just to address the situation or the comment about he was a councillor, got his road paved, and now he doesn't want any traffic on it. That's the furthest thing from the truth, because when I first come in, there was a discussion. We didn't have a 10-year road building plan, and there was a discussion about rebuilding the road in front of our place, 232, and I opposed that, saying that there was other roads in the county that probably needed more. I wasn't aware of them because I was new in here, and that needed the work more than that road. So that was successful, and I don't know where they went and built the road or upgraded the road instead of that one, but it was. And then shortly after that, we had discussions at the council here to build and put together a 10-year plan for road building, and that when that was put in, the Nameka Road, or 232 as it's referred to, was on that discussion. And when it come to having it designed and built and the layout of where it was going to go, I opposed coming over top of Hammer Hill, because I was so afraid that that was going to be a real danger problem if we paved that road with more trucks and more traffic on it, and it's just too steep of an incline. And my idea at the time was to turn south west of Hammer Hill on road 234, Range Road 234, and go down to the correction line, Township Road 230, and go out to the highway that way instead of going over top of Hammer Hill. But I lost that discussion, and consequently it was built and paved over top of Hammer Hill. And I can see where most of the conversation in the survey was to deal with the speed on the road, and I don't think speed is the main thing. I think the main discussion we should be having is on the safety of that road, and it was already alluded to by the speaker before me about the heavy truck traffic that's on that. It's not just, and I expected there would be an increase in grain traffic, grain haulers, and cattle liners, and also there's a lot of hay goes back and forth on that road, and but now there's the trucks that are coming out of the city, the transport trucks, and just when I was sitting at the kitchen table yesterday morning, there was a Bison truck, a Manitoulin truck, and a Highway 9 Express truck that went by our place. So those are all trucks that are not hauling and not doing business in Wheatland County. I would suspect that they're just transport trucks taking a short cut to the highway or whatever reason they're using. And I agree with the speaker before that was probably, has not probably, but it has really increased since the road on the Siksika Nation has been, 901 has been slowed down to 80 kilometers. That's when we've seen the really big increase of the transport trucks on that road. So I take it they're using it to get by that speed zone down there, so it takes longer to get to the highway. And if I remember correctly, my the reasons that I had learned through the media, through printed or through the TV or the radio, was that the people on Siksika Nation were concerned about going for walks on the road, and also with their dogs being run over, and a danger to their children that were using that road to whatever purpose, and so it's not it's reasons exactly the same that we could be using to slow ours down to deal with this situation. And I would, the other thing I'd like to address is where the 180 kilometer zone is on that road. There's other spots on that 232 between the Strathmore Road and the number 1 that have just as, maybe not as quite as big a blind spot for when you're pulling on with hills and stuff. But I know at our place, the traffic coming from the east, you can see the big trucks coming, but you can't see the cars. The dip in the road and the knoll there blocks the car traffic from seeing it, and it's upon you by the time, if you pull out going west, they're on you before you can blink. And I can't for the life of me understand why the Nameka people got that protection and everybody else on the road that's in the same situations didn't. It just doesn't seem like that's a fair treatment of everybody along that road. And I'd like to go back to the most dangerous spot, I think, now, and the one that really concerned me, and it's just a matter of time, and that's the west side of Hammer Hill. There's, I believe there's 3 approaches from residents on there now, about halfway down the hill. And if big trucks come over that, doing the speed that are allowed 100 now, and I'd like to see it down to 80, but the big trucks come over there. If somebody pulls out in front of them, even if they jump on the brakes, they're going to run over whoever's on the road. They're not, that hill is, I'm not an engineer, but I know that hill is steep enough that you couldn't stop a loaded semi, even if you wanted to. And I guess the other thing, when it comes to changing the speed limit from 100K down to 80K, I hope my figures are right here, and anybody else, I'm willing to be challenged on this and corrected if I'm wrong. But if they're traveling, if the whole road, and this is not this is without the 80 kilometers, 2 mile stretch that's in there at Nameka, but if the whole road stays at 100 kilometers, at 100 kilometers, it takes 0.6 minutes to cover a kilometer, and the time is 3.8 minutes to travel the whole road from the Trans-Canada to the Strathmore Road. And if you change it to 80K, it's 0.75 minutes per kilometer, and that is a total time of 17.25 minutes. And the difference in that, traveling that whole road, is 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Well, I challenge anybody to think an accident is worth 3.25 minutes of their time. I think if there's any questions, I'd be willing to take part in them, or I'll listen to the other speakers, and thank you very much. And I hope I stayed inside of my 10 minutes today.
You did. Thank you, Mr. Sauvé, and my apologies for not announcing that at the beginning. Are there any questions for Mr. Sauvé? The third speaker that we have registered to speak is Susan Fields. Good morning. If you can just state your name for the record, please.
My name is Susan Fields. I'm wife of Ian. We've lived there for some years now. Our section of the road was always paved previous to the gravel being paved, and it was a lot quieter, but I do feel that safety is a real issue. I know we're in an 80-kilometer zone. I would say maybe 2 in 7 vehicles are actually going the 80. They're all going way over 100 kilometers an hour. I've seen the big trucks go past when I'm out working in the yard. and they're just looking at their phones. They're not looking at the road. They're not looking to see if there's anybody on the road. And I have, like my husband said, almost been rear-ended, turning into my driveway. I have nowhere else to go. I'm not going to go all the way to Highway 1 just to stay out of somebody's way. And I just find it's very, very dangerous. Some of our other neighbours would have liked to have been here, but unfortunately they're all working today. But they have their young people, they have young families. We're getting more young families in that area. You see the school buses stop every morning to at least 8 houses. And I just feel that it's really, really dangerous. But I feel also that by bringing the speed limit down to 80, it will help, and hopefully it will deter a lot of the big trucks from going down that road. But again, it's down to policing, because there's nobody to stop them. There's nobody to enforce that, which seems to be quite the issue. I know where the police officers sit, and I know when they're there because I can tell by how quiet the trucks are, how slow they're going. So you know they're sitting there. But obviously the guys are on the radios talking to each other, so they know that the police are waiting for, to give them speeding tickets. I also used to cycle on that road. We used to walk on that road. That road has been used for many, many years, even before we moved there, for cyclists, because they like the hills, they like the practice, they like the quietness of it. We don't see those anymore. We don't see people walking anymore. The 2 accidents, I know the gentleman there was talking to the RCMP. We have known of 2 accidents this year. One was into some cows, several cows died, and another one was a pony was hit on the highway right by our neighbours. I just feel that safety is a really big issue. There's a lot of local traffic, which I have no issue with. The issue that we have is mainly with the big trucks, like the transport trucks, like the other gentleman said. Because you can sit there and you can see, like 4:30 yesterday afternoon, I was in the back of the house and it seems to echo over that way. In a 5-minute period, I must have heard 9-10 trucks go through there. And we're also between the 2 hills, so you get the braking as they're coming down, and then you get the acceleration as they go up the other one. Which again is another issue. Like my husband says, we can't sit in the summer with the windows open because we can't hear the TV. The noise is just very excessive. I don't think I have anything else to add. Everybody else has covered that. But thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Are there other members of the public who would like to share? If you can just please come to the podium and state your name.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Mike Comstock. I live directly on Hammer Hill. Now, I've worked in the trucking industry my whole life, 35 years. And so I'm very familiar with the transport trucks that are going by my place. And as previous speakers have said, these guys aren't working in the county. It's a shortcut road. I've actually asked the question to some of the fleets that I see day to day, why are you going that way? It's shorter, it's quicker. That's the only reason. First of all, this is a county road. This isn't a provincial highway. The effect that these trucks have on this road will affect all the taxpayers in this county, including myself and you. So that's a big concern to me, but that's not my main concern. My main concern is the transport trucks. And as the previous speakers have said, safety is of utmost concern. On Hammer Hill, where I live, on the west side coming down, I've checked sight distances, and I know within the county, the sight distances, whether it's 600 feet or 1,000 feet, it takes a fully loaded semi-truck, 80,000 pounds, 525 feet to stop. That's 2 football fields. There is no way coming over that hill either direction, and like I said, there's 10 approaches on that hill, either side within about a half-mile range, including 2 WID access points on either side of the road. They're in and out there every morning. So I've tried it myself. I've counted from the top of the hill to any of those approaches or side roads or secondary roads coming onto that road. and there is no way that a truck can stop in that amount of time. The west side of that hill is the sun gets to it last. It's always icy. Coming out of our driveway, for instance, there are times when we have to go turn right and go down the hill, turn around and come back up the hill in the early morning. That's just part of living in Alberta. We get that. It's the safety factor that is so huge. Now, what else was I going to tell you? I think you know, Ian and Susan, where they live is also a factor. The trucks using the Jake brakes coming down there to slow down for the 80K is a huge factor. I hear them every day. I sat at the end of the road one day and counted trucks. I lost count. And that never happened before. I've lived in the area my whole life pretty much. And that never happened. It's tenfold the amount of trucks that are on the road. So my main concern is deterring the trucks from coming there. I think the biggest factor and easiest way to do it is make the whole road 80K. There's not the slowing down and speeding up. That will deter the trucks coming out of Glenmore Industrial or Foothills Industrial. They come out Glenmore 817 to 232. As you said before, speakers, they used to go to 901, or they're going to have to go back to Strathmore on Highway number 1, which they don't like to do because there's 3 traffic lights or 4 traffic lights in Strathmore, and that's a big factor. So this is very convenient for them. I've been told firsthand by the drivers. So that's my point. I think it's a huge safety concern, and as Ken said, it's only a matter of time until someone is killed or injured on that road. I don't know what the standards for that highway are, if they're 80K when it was built or 100K, but that's a huge factor for liability for you as councillors and as the county, depending on what it is. I don't know, but that's something that can be found out, I'm sure. So thank you for taking or listening to me for a few minutes here, and I hope you consider this very seriously.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to share? Councillor Kester.
Just a few comments. When Ken was up and when he was councillor, we did develop the 10-year road plan. And it was part of the plan was gave the staff greater input in selecting the roads, take a lot of them decisions out of the council isn't fighting which road gets built all the time, right? So, and in that process, when that road was decided to be paved, it was never talked about being a shortcut road. It was to get the traffic off of the gravel roads and make them better and safer, and get the grain trucks onto, and county residents have a good road, year-long road. So that was why for me, the road was approved, was for local concerns, get the road safe in the area, get them off the gravel road so the maintenance costs are more concentrated onto the highway, which can stand the loads. As far as having 80 here, 100 there, the 80s don't work because you're through them before you realize you're doing 110 or 20. So I would be more in favor of making the whole road 80 for the exact concerns you've heard, to make it safe. It's no different than the people on the Siksika Nation wanting their roads safe for their residents, 80, if it's helped. And I think also to make it more safe, I also heard that the 901 is being patrolled more. Maybe that's something we have to look at too. Just, it's true that when a patrol car gets out there, it only takes a few minutes and every trucker in the country knows they're there. Maybe it's just more frequent stops. But I would be more in favor of 80 for the whole stretch. That's what our residents want there. The road is built for the residents there. It wasn't built for a shortcut. It was built for the roads in that area. And I'm hearing from the people in that area, they wanted 80, and it was 80, and for 3 minutes. and 26 seconds or whatever it was. I think that's a fair price. They got an all-weather road. They got everything they want. Yeah, that's it.
Any other questions or comments?
I think I have a difficulty in that majority of the people who filled out the survey, I think 100 is reasonable. And also that they also say in the survey that that they have no issues with the conditions of the road or the traffic volumes and that kind of thing. 64% say that. And so I understand that the residents there, it's a safety issue, and so we do need to consider that, and pretty much kind of have to go with the safest option. I do hope that it does have the result of taking traffic off the road. I'm surprised by the number of commercial trucks that are willing to go on Glenmore Trail, stop at the stop sign at Langdon, do 60 through Langdon, then 80, then stop again at Highway 817, turn right, go down south, stop again, do a left-hand turn, which is even riskier, and then continuing on, having to climb Hammer Hill, and then stop again to make a right-hand turn back onto the highway. I mean, surely it's more simple for transport. If I were driving a transport truck, I would get on the ring road to the 901 and just do 80. Also, when you Google like Clooney to Fleet Break in Calgary on Glenmore Trail, the distance and the times are like a minute different. I'm so shocked that truck transports choose that road. It's surprising to me, but that's what's reported is happening, so I can't say otherwise. So I guess I support the reduction to 80, but I do feel like it's a shame that we've spent the money to pave a road just to have the speed limit the same as all the gravel roads in the county. And so those are my comments.
Councillor Priest took a lot of the things I was going to say away because I am a professional driver. That's what I do for a living. And seeing guys do that, the only reason I can say why is they're avoiding the scales for one. But that's one reason, and avoiding the traffic lights in Strathmore for two. But what people need to do, if you see somebody speeding, and I've said this to many people, time, date, plate, license plate, phone the RCMP, they will get a ticket. And for a professional driver to get a ticket nowadays, your insurance rates, if I get one, my rates will double. Like, it is horrendously expensive for professional drivers to get tickets. They will fight it, they'll go to court and do everything they can to avoid getting that on their license because it costs them money, lots of money. And the company can't hire them after a while. And as a professional driver, it's a shame what some of these guys are doing. I see it every day. I drive beside them. I see them flop over in the ditches. I see them that is not something that is in our purview to control. I wish it was. The only thing that I can think, I'm trying to think, what can we do to fix this? What can we do? We have the ability to put a toll road in there for commercial drivers. You'll never see another one on there again. We have that ability at this county to do that. We've never done it before, but that's about the only thing. We cannot restrict them by signage alone. But it's something I don't even know if we'd want to consider. But that's about the only thing we have that could, tools that we've never done before, but we can do that as a municipality.
The other thing I want to say was I do hope that the residents there are lobbying the provincial government to perhaps get the speed limit raised back up on the 901. I mean, it is a provincial road, and it's the better place for truck traffic, I would say, for sure. So I don't know what the receptibility of that would be, but I feel like we're changing our speed limits because of something else that's happened previously, that maybe that's where the issue is maybe that 901 shouldn't be 80. I don't know what, but that's all.
Other questions or discussion?
Just a question for administration. Can we put a speed limit for commercial trucks at 80? I only ever drive this road in my truck, in a personal, like a 1-ton vehicle. It is a great piece of road, so I don't know anything about trucking, but I know that putting a paved road and then putting it at the same speed as a gravel road doesn't make any sense for a small vehicle. So, and it doesn't matter what we do, it'll all depend on enforcement. And unless we're willing to spend a boatload of money on enforcement, and I'm pretty sure if we tell our enforcement people to make sure that they compensate, that they have to pay for their wages by writing tickets, we can do that. I don't know if we want to do that, but I know we can do that. City of Calgary does it all the time. But yeah, so I don't know. Can we put a speed limit on for commercial traffic? I mean, a lot of the farmers are going to be a little bit choked at that one too, but it's...
I'm going to defer to the senior peace officer, and then perhaps, Chris, you can elaborate on the process for any changes to the traffic bylaw as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. When that conversation came up about the differential speed limits, it definitely is possible. The interstates in the United States are a prime example. However, they're all 4-lane highways, and on a 2-lane highway, having a commercial truck doing 80 and a car doing 100 may cause more problems than it would solve. Now, enforcement would be a nightmare, to be exact, and if there was differential speed limits, because again, you would have to look at the classification of the vehicle. Do we go with the provincial classification at 4,500 kilograms? We go with 11,794 to determine what vehicles go with that speed, and so on and so forth. It would be, anything is possible. It would be extremely difficult, but my humble opinion would mean that it would cause more problems than it would solve by having differential speed limits for vehicles.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess my question is, Scott, what's a toll road look like? What would that look like?
If you go down to eastern United States, there's toll roads all over the place, and you'll never see commercial truck drivers on there. They'll avoid it like the plague because they don't want to cost them money, cost the driver money to go there. Same in BC, the island, or to go across the bridge, you got to pay they got a camera up there and it takes your license plate. It's automatic. It's done as soon as you go on that road. That's expensive, but you could pay for itself. But that's about the only I'm not saying I want that. I'm saying that's about the only option we have to control it, other than maybe differential speeds. We build these roads to a certain weight standard, and we did build it. We could also put a weight restriction on there. I don't know, even if it didn't need it, we could do that. That would stop it. Local traffic only signs I've seen people ignore. You have truck route signs in the city of Calgary that keep the trucks off of certain routes, but if they're doing a delivery there, they're allowed to go there. So there's very little you can do once you build the road.
Well, I guess I have put this question too. What if we tried it for, because a lot of this is habit. If you moved the whole road to 80 and tried it for a certain amount of time and see if it is pushing them back to 901, I guess you just do count. You have the counts now, and then you'd find out what the counts were later. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, there's lots of things to consider. As the councillor of the area, I made notes because I was worried I would forget things. I do regret not saying more when this first was brought to council in April of 2019. So this might seem like too broad of context, but I've literally read hundreds of pages, if not thousands, about legislating speed limits and considerations and different methods. So I'm just going to share my thoughts. Governance over speed limits is a complex responsibility and one that I don't take lightly. It's frustrating to me that we're in this position because of a previous decision made without significant attention to the previous engineering report and recommendation, and that did not consider the standard to which this road was built, despite administration identifying a concern with the safety standard not being met in terms of sight lines, number of approaches, and range road intersection. Speed management is a critical task where we must balance safety with operational efficiency in our transportation network. The speed that motorists travel greatly influences the severity of a collision, regardless of what caused the collision. So there is clear evidence that while a high proportion of collisions are not necessarily caused by speed, they may be caused by inattention, which was referenced by some of the ratepayers. The speed at which the vehicles involved in the collision is a significant factor in the effects of the severity of that collision. In a roadway network, and I can provide references for everything that I'm saying, in a roadway network where speed is properly managed, the safety of all road users is considered the primary goal, and acceptable speeds are consistent with the roadway environment. Guiding principles for setting speed limits. The intent of appropriate speed limits is to encourage speed limits that are compatible with the road function and surrounding environment, while considering the safety of all road users. The following guiding principles can help provide safe, credible speed limits. Reduce speed while maintaining reasonable mobility. Maximizing safety is the important objective, and all things being equal, a slower speed environment is safer for all road users. Permit the right speed on the right road. Motor vehicle speeds and the safety of all road users must be carefully considered in network planning, so operating speeds are not unnecessarily restricted. Promote consistency in speed between road users, and I think this was just referenced in response to considering of a differential speed limit. That was one of my questions, but I'm hesitant to go down that road. Number one, the evidence is inconclusive on the effects, but also there can be negative impacts, which were just referenced. As differences in speed increase between motorists, more lane changing, overtaking, and rear-end conflicts are created. Greater differences in speed increase the probability of a serious injury or fatality for both motorized and non-motorized road users, which lends strength to consistency in speed limits on a road. Another guiding principle is minimizing changes in speed limits. As best as possible, a roadway system should permit the motorist to travel at a consistent speed. Abrupt and unexpected changes in speed limits should be avoided. There are perspectives with competing guiding principles and diverse accepted models and procedures for setting speed limits. So when you delve into this, there's multiple sort of four main, but then there are other ways that different governments set speed limits and different considerations and models that they use. In my opinion, making decisions based solely on the fact that the road is paved lacks due diligence into the complexity of factors that must be considered when balancing safety with efficiency. Township Road 232 is not a highway or an arterial road. It has multiple direct access points from residences, approximately 30, and over 70 field access points, in addition to regular range road intersections. And the reason I say that, basing it purely on it being paved, that was part of the rationale in April of 2019 that was presented to council, was that because the road is paved, it should be 100 kilometers an hour. The Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE, states freeways and other high-level roads can accommodate higher speeds because of their design features that have little or no interaction with non-motorized user or adjacent development. Road types with lower functional classes, such as minor arterials, collector and local roads, provide for a mix of road users, requiring that safety take on a higher priority. I highly value engagement and public input. However, there can be challenges in relying solely on survey responses. One model for setting speeds in the state of Florida requires a deviation of 4 to 8 miles per hour less than the 85th percentile speed to be supported by a supplemental investigation, which identifies the following: that there exists road or roadside features not readily obvious to the normally prudent driver, such as length of section, alignment, roadway width, surface condition, sight distance, traffic volume, crash experience, maximum comfortable speed in curves, and side friction. From our survey data, one could draw the conclusion that there are road features not readily obvious to the normally prudent driver. In this case, sight distance and maximum comfortable speed in curves. In this case, specifically vertical curves or hills. Given so many respondents who purport to use the road regularly are not aware of, and based on this line of thinking, support the current 100 kilometer an hour speed limit. And what I'd like to highlight to council is that we are aware of the engineering standards that the road was designed and built to. And as was referenced by one of the speakers, we can't ignore that information that we've been provided, and it could create potential liability. Well, it's generally considered under the 85th percentile principle, and there's like this thing with the Solomon curve and the safest speed at which to travel. The 85th percentile principle is where the speed at or below which 85% of drivers are operating their vehicles, or one standard deviation above the mean operating speed, to be inappropriate to set a speed limit that is inconsistent with drivers' perceptions. So TAC, which is the transportation, I have it somewhere. It's the Canadian guideline. Transportation Association of Canada guidelines do recognize the 85th percentile as one way to estimate the running speed on the roadway. They also do recognize the average speed, and I couldn't access those actual guidelines, but we'll get to like the 85th percentile speed and the average speed for this road. This 85th percentile is a frequently used descriptive statistic and a model. However, I also read that the original research between speed and safety, which purported that the safest travel speed is the 85th percentile, is dated and may not be valid under scrutiny. I acknowledge that research shows that speed limits that are significantly different than operating speeds can actually contribute to greater speed dispersion and increased risk of collisions. And as counterintuitive as that is, there is some evidence that by either raising or lowering speeds, more specifically lowering speeds below what sort of whether you're looking at the 85th percentile or the average speed of travel is, can actually create further collisions. And that's kind of counterintuitive. I think our tendency is to think that the slower the speed limit is, the safer the road is. That is not always the case. However, the function and physical characteristics of the roadway should help drivers to select the appropriate speed. The road cues and speed limit should provide a uniform message. However, how does this integrate when a decision-making body such as us sets a speed limit that exceeds the design limitations of the road? I would posit that law-abiding, prudent drivers would have a tendency to trust that the decision-making authority has considered all data and evidence available and set a speed limit that is safe, and that this in turn could significantly affect the speed at which drivers travel. Should we be using the 85th percentile principle of the current speed on the road when a previous council decision may have directly influenced that speed range? A further criticism has been leveled against the 85th percentile speed as a primary determinant of the speed limit. Or another criticism is that this practice may lead to an upward drift or creep in average operating speeds over time. To me, that is simply logical because I do tend to drive the speed limit or slightly over, but not exceedingly over. But when the speed limit was raised on the road, I do tend to drive the new speed limit, even despite being aware of what the road was engineered to. And I think many other prudent drivers on the road could be making the same decision, which of course would impact that 85th percentile speed subsequent to our decision in April of 2019. One principle of highway design states that the speed selected for design should fit the travel desires and habits of nearly all drivers. In other words, it should be nearly inclusive of all the typically desired speeds of drivers, where feasible. And I think that feasible is key. A couple things to note. There are limitations on feasibility, such as cost, that may have made designing this road a desirable speed unattainable. We heard former Division 2 Councillor share, he shared this in 2019, but he also shared it this morning, that he had advocated for moving the road to be paved to avoid the significant hill that is currently on the road. If it's this council's position that we should not be paving roads that we can't drive 100 kilometers an hour on, then I think it's prudent we make certain that we are cognizant of the design phase on any project, that we are investing adequately to design all road construction for paving projects to meet that standard. And to me, it makes no sense to design a road to get an engineering report that validates that the road was built to the design specs and then to ignore that engineering report. So if we're going to take that approach to setting speed limits, then I don't think we should be getting engineering reports in the first place, because if we're going to ignore them. The concept of optimal speed limits is one that suggests speed limits that are optimized from a societal perspective, considering the impacts that operating speeds have on the various societal objectives. It's recognized that individual drivers, in most instances, do not consider the risks imposed on others by their choice of driving speeds, or on the cumulative effects of their speed choice on the environment, which there was more information regarding one of the issues that was raised around the environmental noise from the speed. And there is clear evidence that demonstrates that as speed increases, particularly with large commercial traffic, that noise increases concurrently with those increases in speed. The optimal speed for an individual driver may be different from the optimal speed for a community. As with any complex topic, whether a system is truly optimal is dependent on the perspective of the analyst, whether it be the road user, the taxpayer, the local community, and society. All have differing views and values affecting the output of the optimization process. Data-driven and evidence-based decision-making is one of my top priorities. A report from the Federal Highway Administration indicates that there's been no consensus among practitioners concerning the methods and techniques that should be used to select the most appropriate speed limit for a particular facility, and consensus does not appear likely in the near future. This obviously makes our job challenging. In previous debate, multiple references were made to provincial highways, which are not our responsibility or jurisdiction. Township Road 232 is not a provincial highway, and our transportation priorities may not be the same as the province. Today, I would ask you to consider the safety of our ratepayers, of the students getting on and off the buses on Township Road 232, of our agricultural producers entering their fields to seed, spray, and harvest, and of our ratepayers entering the flow of traffic with limited sight lines, with increased numbers of large commercial vehicles traveling at speeds in excess of the design speed of the road. The laws of physics make it very clear that speed and crash severity are inextricably linked. In the 92 seconds that could be saved with a 10-kilometer speed limit decrease, or is the 92 seconds that could be saved with a 10-kilometer-an-hour speed limit decrease worth the increased risk to human lives? Today, I ask you to balance efficiency with safety. And I have heard several references to consideration of an 80-kilometer speed limit. I am hesitant to support that due to reviewing the original, and at this point I'm referencing the 2015 engineering report. There are 3 sections on the old pavement, the western section. There's 3 sections that are critical. Now, critical, it's important to note that that defines that K factor is near the low boundary of the range provided by that Transportation Association of Canada guidelines, but that the critical K factors are below what is specified by Alberta Transportation. So we are not meeting the Alberta Transportation guidelines for 3 sections on the western section of pavement. And there are 6 critical sections on the east pavement for 100 kilometers an hour and 1 at 90 kilometers an hour. The original speed limits that had been set by the council in 2015, I believe, sorry, no, there was, the engineering report was in December of 2015. The original speed limits set in February 7th of 2017, making the road 90 kilometers an hour, except for a 1 kilometer section at 80 kilometers an hour, which I believe was at Hammer Hill at that time, was where the 80 kilometer an hour zone was. That speed limit did comply with the design speeds of the road. So, and administration, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the design speed does not typically correspond to a posted speed limit, because there's clear evidence that drivers typically drive around 10 kilometers an hour. There's different numbers that I found, mainly American, but that they typically drive in excess of the speed limit. And so typical practice from what I read is to set a posted speed limit at approximately, for our purposes, approximately 10 kilometers an hour lower than the design speed, which could which would support a 90-kilometer-hour speed limit across the entire road. The only place that does not meet the Alberta Transportation Guidelines is on Hammer Hill. And I have heard from some of the residents and from some users of the road that was 80-kilometer-an-hour warning signs. It's not a mandatory speed limit, but it does draw attention to the hill there, particularly if you're driving at night or you're a new driver on the road who's unfamiliar with the road. That should alert you to the fact that there is a risk on that hill, particularly given the driveways and the access points that we have ratepayers utilizing. I did just actually hear somebody on the line, and I realized that we did not ask if there are people that have called in who would like to contribute to the public input session. And so I would like to pause and ask if there are individuals who have called into the meeting who would like to contribute to the public input session. And I apologize for not calling on you following the people who have attended in person. That actually makes me feel a little bit better, because I felt terrible that we didn't have anybody registered to speak online, but we do have that provision if anybody would like to. Councillor Kester.
Thanks for that, Amber. That is a brief history of this road and the speed limits that are on it. And I have to commend you for remembering about the phone calls. Yeah, we sometimes get engaged in things and we forget. Thanks for remembering that. My history on that road was I have a hard time voting for differential speed limits on a road. I just think that's bad. I got one on the Rocky Ford Road. I voted against that, but it's there. I don't think anybody follows it at all. But this road, what I've heard, and all the approaches and people getting onto it, and even now the farm traffic for what it was built for, getting semis on this road with the speed limit and the sight distances and the traffic, I'm still thinking 80 clicks. And if we want to limit the traffic on that road, we could be really bold and limit the Glenmore Trail. That's our road too. A lot of this traffic, some of it could be coming from there. We could put a speed limit on that too. And I don't know, I'll have to ask Scott. There's a section of road there, I believe, at the end of the county to Langdon is Rocky View. Is that banned?
Right now it isn't, but because of the winter frost, but most time it is banned.
It's
and
mostly banned.
that ends a lot of it, so that's probably why a lot of traffic is coming this way now.
Yeah. So, of course, it's not our road. But we could limit traffic there too. But I would be for safety factors from the residents that are there. They've made a big effort. We got residents from number 1 to the 817 that don't like it. I wholeheartedly support the 80 clicks straight through. And listened about this road. I don't know how many times it's come to council. But my position has always been I don't like differential speed limits. And the weakest point of any chain, the weakest point is the weakest link. So we have reports that hill is not safe until you get down to 80. And we've limited it around 80 now, I believe, around the Langdon, or not the Langdon quarter, the Ardnode, not Ardnode either, Nameka corner. And we have other busy intersections, so I would support that. As far as recommendation from administration, we'll make a motion, we accept this presentation as information. When are we going to deal with it? I'm all for dealing it for now.
So I think the complexity with that is we would need to amend the traffic bylaw. The traffic, I have it pulled up, there's another word in there, traffic Something bylaw? Enforcement?
Through the chair, ma'am, it's just traffic, the traffic control bylaw.
Traffic control.
And we would have to bring a motion forward to amend the schedule of that bylaw, changing the speed limit for that area.
Okay, so is that a bylaw type hearing, or do we have to do like 3 motions, or is it another resolution?
I believe it would be another resolution. It would be an RFD brought forward, and you could do it in 3 readings.
Okay, it's more like an appendix then?
It is, sir, through the chair.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's in the schedules that the roads are specified, the speed limits are specified for roads. My counter argument to the 80 kilometer an hour, and I will be fully transparent, I know I'm not going to make any of my ratepayers happy today. Virtually none of them are going to be happy today because the vast majority support either a 100 kilometer an hour road or a significant reduction. It is very difficult for me to support the 80 kilometer an hour speed limit, recognizing that the entire road is designed and built to a 90 kilometer an hour posted speed limit, with the exception of Hammer Hill, and with the input from several ratepayers that the warning signs have been effective at managing to not currently with a 100 kilometer an hour speed limit, but if we were to consider a lower speed limit, I would advocate for council to consider a 90 kilometer an hour speed limit throughout the entire road. My rationale being it would reduce the risk of those interface collisions where you have speed limits being increased and reduced throughout the road. It's not a long road. Mr. Sobe is absolutely right. It's a 23 kilometer road. And when my numbers were very similar, I think you said 90 seconds at our last meeting, and I calculated 92 seconds with a 10 kilometer an hour reduction in speed. To me, that 92 seconds is inexcusable if you're compromising safety. But a 90 kilometer an hour speed limit does not compromise safety, with the exception of Hammer Hill. I would be prepared to, or I would also consider an 80 kilometer actual speed limit on that road, but I think there's also merit in considering the warning signs. Part of the reason I am contemplating 90 kilometers an hour, and I honestly, still my mind is not necessarily made up on this because I'm weighing so many different considerations, but I also did hear from ratepayers who prioritize the efficiency of our transportation network and who utilize that road and very strongly felt that the road speed should be maintained at 100 kilometers an hour. Through discussion, the majority of those ratepayers thought it might be acceptable to consider a 90 kilometer an hour speed limit to balance that safety with the efficiency. And I'm very cognizant that the speed is not the only issue that our ratepayers are identifying. There are multiple other issues. I think the reason that council's conversation focuses on speed is because we are limited and very constrained in what we can control around the road. We can't control who uses the road. I hadn't thought of something like a toll. I would need to look into something like that more. I'm not sure about the practicality of that in Wheatland, just in terms of setting it up and the costs and enforcement. I'm very cognizant of the impacts to our enforcement, because I agree, I think it was Councillor Eichert that said, if we're not enforcing it, it's useless either way, and that's evidence-based as well. Setting a speed limit lower does not change anything unless there is the ability to enforce that. And we do have constraints on our enforcement capacity, and we can't make that unreasonable for our law professionals that are enforcing the speed limits on our roads. The weight restriction, my concern with that is primarily around our egg producers. I think we need to prioritize the efficiency and the ability to use that road. I can only imagine that that was a significant factor in paving the road in the first place, was so that we weren't needing to ban that road. And we do have a large number of egg producers that utilize that road. The only other thing that I did want to bring up, and it's a conversation for another day, but I would like to propose that Council also consider a speed limit review policy. so that in order for a speed limit to be brought forward, it would need to either be brought forward by ratepayers for consideration by council, or if there was a demonstration of a significant change to the road. So paving of a road would be an excellent example of when you would review the policy. It could be based on something like if there was a significant change to traffic counts that may be caused by a decision made in another municipality or authority that's outside of our jurisdiction, but we would have a mechanism to respond to that within the policy. I did find a model that we could look at as an example. What this could eliminate is an individual councillor bringing forward a proposed speed limit without one of those other triggers, either direct requests from ratepayers or evidence-based, like evidence of a change in conditions or use. There are several qualifying statements in that original engineering report surrounding indicating things like the traffic volume on the road is relatively low. The majority of vehicles using this intersection, and this is referencing to Hammer Hill, are smaller vehicles. And it's things like that where I think that we have to keep that context as well with the recommendations from the original engineering report. So in terms of if we were to consider a change, would it be appropriate to pass a motion now directing an amendment be brought back to the traffic control bylaw with perhaps a specific amendment just so that it's clear for administration? And then that would be contingent on council obviously passing the 3 readings to amend that bylaw, just so we're clear on process. My key priority is balancing efficiency with safety, but I do think that we need to prioritize safety and just be mindful of what this road was designed and built for. So I will put a motion on the floor that we direct administration to bring back an amendment to the traffic control bylaw, amending the speed limit for Township Road 232 from 817 to Highway 1 to 90 kilometers an hour, with the continued warning signs to be left in place at the base of Hammer Hill on the east and the west side. I believe they're on both sides currently. And I'll open the floor to questions or debate.
I'm just going to add a couple things. This is a county road, and if we're getting significant commercial traffic, which our ratepayers are telling us, we're paying for that road when those trucks wear it out. So I think that's a consideration. And 170 people answered the survey, but you said that 30 people live on the road. 4 of them are here today, so that's 13% of the ratepayers. And then I guess I would just direct the question to Scott, because you're a professional driver. If we put it to 90, is that going to stop the trucks from going there, or are they just going to go down it and go 100 anyway?
I was going to mention the 90 kilometer an hour. There is quite a few companies, LCVs, so the double trailers, they're restricted to 90. That's their operating range. They're supposed to anyway, so it won't stop those guys. If they're making that turn on that road, I give them credit, because that's 2 trailers is a big thing to do, especially not so much at the number 1, but at 817, that would be a tight turn to make, which I'm sure they've done it. But yeah, it probably wouldn't stop a lot of those guys. The problem, and I was going to bring this up, with the commercial traffic, that's what I hear most of the issue with is the only keys we have, and I did mention the toll road, which is something that we've never done before, and is weight reduction. Weight reduction will hurt the ag producers, but you can't win on this. You can't discriminate between commercial, agricultural, they're all the same. Yes, we have Glenmore Trail, and I've often wondered, I drive it just about every day with a 5-ton. Why is it some is restricted, some isn't? The speed limits, like through Langdon, is at 60. That avoids a lot of them. It's making it inconvenient for these guys. But once they start talking to each other and they start doing the same thing, they'll all start communicating and they'll all start using it. But also, like I said, time, date, place, phone the RCMP, this guy was speeding, I'm willing to go to court. You have to say you're willing to go to court. They will ticket those guys.
I'm noting that we have a participant in the public input session who would like to address council again. Would any councillor object to hearing from the ratepayer again? Is there any objection? Mr. Field, if you would take the microphone, please.
I listened to the comments that's coming out here, and I note that there's a lot of people being questioned on your survey. How many of those actually live on the 232? Because we're the ones that are primarily affected. We're the ones that are actually able to note the increase in traffic and the decrease in quality of life. And for that, we get an increase in our taxes. Thank you very much. So my point is, if you increase that to 90, people are going to do 100. If you increase it or decrease it all the way to 80, in the first instance, they're going to be reluctant to use it. That's a primary, because there's no advantage to them, especially if we actually increase the enforcement of it. Now, you talked about a toll. I come from the UK. We have toll roads. We have whereby you monitor the speed from one end of the road to the other, okay, with the speed cameras. We have speed cameras that are just static, and we take a snapshot. There's all manner of ways you can enforce this. You cannot rely. We have 3 of these gentlemen who do a great job. Nobody can dispute that, but they can't be everywhere. You need speed cameras, and you need to enforce an 80. And once you do that, you'll get a reduction that we want. We want our lives back to where they were. And as it's been said quite eloquently by Mr. Coaster, the road was done for the benefit of us and for the ag, not for bison, not for 353, not for light speed. Now, when they put light speed on the side of their vehicles, is that their company name or what they're trying to achieve? Because quite honestly, they come past there, and I hear this about 90, and I hear about what the road engineering is. You have for example, if you have a car that can do 150, doesn't mean you have to do 150. Right? If you have a road that's capable of carrying at 100, you don't have to do 100. It's not safe. If my wife can be nearly rear-ended, so can anybody else's wife. You're a classic example where you guys live, right? Reduce the speed to 80 all the way and enforce it, and see how what happens. Because quite honestly, it's not bearable where we are right now. And noise increases incrementally with speed. There's no 2 ways about it. The cattle trucks are out at night. They're at 8, 9 o'clock at night. They're coming past, and they're doing well over 100. And I don't know if they're on a bonus. I don't know what they're doing. But again, we can't enforce that by 3 guys. It's just not possible. So we need speed cameras, or we need something like that. And that's all I've got to say, and thank you for hearing that.
Thank you. And thank you to council for hearing the input. Further questions or debate? Councillor Kester.
Something was brought up, past design, why the road was built. There was a lot of discussion on it. I can never remember once thinking that it was 100 clicks to make the speed part of the talk, why we built the road to make it faster. It was just never, to my recollection, remember anything like that. We talked about weight, making an all-weather road. We talked about taking traffic off of the other roads that are in the area and making a main drive-through for the farming traffic. Never once was it, oh, if we pave it, we can make it 100. That's an afterthought. That wasn't part of the design process. And another thing that I've been thinking about here with all the approaches and the farmers, they're coming down the hill. it's harder to get their trucks on the road too when somebody else is bearing down on them. And a lot of those farm trucks, I'm thinking, I don't know if they ever get up to 100, being they get on the road at part-time, get down a few miles, and they turn with their bales or whatever it is they got. And one final comment, I have a hard time going to 90 for safety reasons when the road that we're competing against went to 80 for speed reasons for their citizens. Our citizens should have the same consideration at 80. We lowered a speed limit, I believe, in one of our hamlets down to 30 from the 50, and I think it was reported at the time it only cost them like 28 seconds or something to slow down to 30. I don't think 90 seconds more down to the minute 80 for the whole stretch of road is too much to ask. I still would support the 80.
Yes.
I would worry that the 90 is not going to accomplish what we're going to try to accomplish here. I don't see it as enough of a deterrent. If we're trying to get the commercial traffic off, I don't think that's the answer, because I think they'll just go the 100 and keep their radios going, and they'll just keep using the road. That'd be my thoughts.
Given the I do want to just emphasize one point. To Mr. Field's point about the survey data, it's certainly challenging in analyzing that information and the validity of it. I didn't have a mechanism for my review. I'm not sure the data that administration collected, but it would be very difficult to determine if it's representative of people that specifically live on the road. I am mindful that we do build roads and create a transportation network in the county that does serve all of our ratepayers as well. So I would be very open to hearing, perspectives of ratepayers that might not necessarily live on 232, but utilize the road as well. That being said, I do just want to remind council, and just for the public so that you're aware, I did share every letter that was addressed to me both previously in consideration of speed limits to this road as well as currently. When this was first raised in late fall of 2021, I did forward the correspondence that I received to council. There were at least two that I'm recalling off the top of my head, but there may have been a third of ratepayers that could be validated that live on 232 that were supportive, but that were also had counter positions to what we have heard during the public input session today. I'm just raising that to remind council. I believe the two new councillors, you received that correspondence, I think. It would have been in November of 2021. I'm just raising it to jog everybody's memory, and I did indicate that I would ensure, the one gentleman was unable to be here this morning, but I did indicate that I would ensure that his perspective was reiterated today, and that was that that priority from those ratepayers was on efficiency and maintaining the speed of the road. And those are the kind of competing principles that I'm trying to balance. And I'm currently just trying to consider whether I want to amend my motion to 80 kilometers an hour. There are some unique considerations within or on this road, some of which are outside of our control in terms of other authorities setting speed limits that impact the use of this road. Councillor Larson raised a good point that had been raised previously as well in reference to future costs to ratepayers in terms of asset management and maintaining that road and the wear and tear that we will inevitably see. The road was built to be utilized by all traffic. It was not built for any sort of weight limits or that type of thing, but I think a basic premise of asset management is as more traffic is utilizing it with heavy weights, we will, see increased asset management responsibilities and costs to our ratepayers. So I'm also balancing that. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Being that I'm a commercial driver, I have to say this. In the Alberta Traffic Act, there's a thing that says strive to road conditions. And I'm just stating this because everybody makes us out to be the bad guys, and I have to say this. There's many times that myself and my colleagues that get out there on the road drive way slower than everybody else, only to see people wipe out in front of us, bounce off of us, get killed by us. And we're trying to drive safely. And there's a reason I'm saying this, because we always take the blame for a lot of stuff. There is a lot of us out there, newer drivers, and I'll say it that way, that are really terrible drivers. And Alberta has made an attempt to get these guys to drive better and learning. I don't see it successful yet. I still see the same problems. People drive with their phone in their hands, stuff like that. Those guys should be caught, put in jail for that, because they will kill people. It's a lot of weight, it's a lot of responsibility. I've seen what it can do firsthand, and it scares the hell out of me driving down the road to have somebody drive into me and I have to look at their family when I didn't do anything wrong. But I know if it happens, I will be blamed. And I just want to say that, because it's terrible out there, and it's not, and we have to deal with these issues because of poor drivers, and it just drives me wild, and I'm sure our peace officers see it all the time as well. And then these guys go to court, and they will spend tens of thousands of dollars to get out of that ticket because they know they will not be able to drive again. So.
Given the discussion and hearing the perspective that there may not be a high probability that we would mitigate the issues that are being raised by reducing the speed limit to 90 kilometers an hour, I will amend my motion to reduce the speed limit to 80 kilometers an hour. I would ask council that we not consider it as a temporary measure, though, because some of those principles, and it was pointed out in the second engineering report that we were provided following our April of 2019 speed limit increase, some of the guiding principles around just having consistent speed limits, placing an unnecessary burden on law enforcement personnel by sort of varying speed limits or changing them, and the lack of credibility of speed limit at the posted location and everywhere else. I don't want us to exacerbate that by sort of frequently. I wouldn't want to consider this a temporary measure. If we were to reduce it, we would need, in my opinion, this council would need to be committed to maintaining that. And there will be ratepayers and users of the road who will be frustrated that we are not setting the speed limit on the road to the design speed that it was built to. And that will be frustrating. But I do see that there is a rationale for doing so based on the impact to the ratepayers and users of the road. And some of that, I think, is due to factors outside of our control that we do not, have any jurisdiction over in terms of speed limits on other roads and those types of things, or where, scales are, or those types of things. So we have to very much focus on where we do have jurisdiction and what we can control, and that is primarily the speed limit. So I will amend my motion to set the speed limit on Township Road 232 from secondary Highway 817 to Highway 1 at 80 kilometers an hour for the entirety of the road. Open to questions or discussion or continued debate.
Madam Chair, if I just may, prior to this, I keep hearing a comment, and I just want to put it on the record. Mr. Fields speaks highly of automated speed enforcement, and then just so I don't get anybody's hopes up or anything like that, we're prohibited from using automated traffic enforcement or high-speed cameras and stuff in the rural areas. The province prohibits us from using them. They've actually just come up with a whole bunch of new rules for the use of automated traffic enforcement, so it's not an option for us to use for enforcement out in the rural areas. So I just wanted to let everybody know that prior to anybody wanting to have that throat process again.
Thank you so much. I actually did mean to ask you about that because I wasn't sure with the new rules, but I also didn't think previously we were allowed. You can place like a speed awareness sign that's electronic, but we can't enforce through electronic means. I think one thing that would be key if council were to support this motion is that, and the engineers had recommended this on the subsequent report that we had received, is that there would need to be substantial public awareness prior to like an enforcement, but then there would need to be an enforcement period following in order for it to be a meaningful change to the speed limit.
And we will do that should that be the will of council moving forward. Thank you.
Part of that, when administration's looking at that, sorry for interrupting, is more signage saying the maximum speed's 80? Like, put it one end or the other, but there's people coming in all the way along. It's good reminders. It's cheap public awareness.
Through the chair, there are signs about every mile.
Multiple.
About every mile?
About every mile, or at least every 2 miles.
Oh, I didn't realize there was so many of them.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
there
already
is
done.
multiple.
You just have to change them now. Okay, thanks for that.
Except 2. 2 would be right. Any other questions or debate? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for your work on this. We appreciate it. I will apologize. We had an 11 o'clock appointment, which is who I heard on the phone. My apologies to our CMRB representatives. Yes, and I'm going to apologize further because we are going to take a 5-minute break. We will reconvene at 11:40.
You have been muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice.
And a few others too.
We're just going to start shortly.
Mute off.
CMRB.
We're going to call the meeting back to order. I'd like to apologize to Chair Greg Clark and Chief Officer Jordan Copping, and thank you for your patience with us. Welcome. Please go ahead. We do have the slide deck in our council agenda package, and we do have administration that will be advancing through the slides as well.
Perfect, thank you. Can everyone hear me? This is CMRB Chair Greg Clark, and I've got Jordan Copping with me as well.
Yes, you bet. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, we'll do our very best to go through this relatively quickly. I know a number of your councillors are certainly familiar with the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board. I understand you have a couple of new councillors, and we'll do our best to move relatively quickly through this, allow some time at the end for questions, and certainly as I go, feel free to stop either of us if you have any questions in a moment. Before I begin, though, I do just want to, I suppose it's the 11th of January, but I can still wish you a Happy New Year, but also just hope all is well in Wheatland County, and just offer my thanks to each of you as public servants and to your administration teams. It continues to be a very challenging time in our province and in our communities, and I know municipal officials, elected officials, administration teams are very much on the front lines of that. Emergency services and response, of course, a big part of it as well. And just want to acknowledge that I know that with all the challenge that comes with that, up to and including the impact it may have on your own families. So I just want to offer my thanks to you as public servants for looking out for your communities as we go through continuing difficult times. So, with that, we'll take you through just very, very briefly the history of growth management in the province of Alberta. We were in a situation of having voluntary growth management boards up until about 2018, the Calgary Regional Partnership. Before that, we did have mandatory provincially mandated growth boards dating back to the early and mid-90s. And in 2017, the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board was established by provincial statute. And the current government has reinforced their desire for the two major growth management boards, the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board as well as the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, to be an important part of growth and service planning in both of the two large metropolitan regions, Calgary and Edmonton. Established through a provincial mandate and came into existence on the 1st of January 2018. I've been board chair now for just a little over a year. I was brought in very beginning of 2021 and then now starting my second year in the role. Our region, as I think you know, encompasses 10 municipalities, more than 9,000 square kilometers, and has about 1.6 million people, including a portion of Wheatland County surrounding Strathmore. Our mandate, onto the fourth slide in our deck, I, of course, won't read the full mandate from the regulation, but I will just emphasize I think probably the key point of our mandate, which is the point B. Our job is to promote the long-term sustainability of the Calgary region. That long-term sustainability covers a number of different aspects. That's financial sustainability, reducing costs, encouraging shared infrastructure investments wherever prudent, to reduce costs to our ratepayers, and to reduce the environmental impact of future development, to reduce emissions, to reduce land consumption, to reduce vehicle kilometers traveled. As Jordan gets into his presentation, he'll provide some specific statistics and data on what we believe we can achieve through a growth and servicing plan. Last spring, the board went through a facilitated process of updating our vision. And we have come up with the next 3 slides have the details of what that vision is. I won't go through that in detail, but I'll say that the most, I think, essential element of that is we grow together. The last 3 words on slide number 5. That's our objective, is to ensure that there is mutual benefit for each of the member municipalities, and of course to current and future citizens of the region. I won't get into the details here on slides 5 and 6. The board vision there, I think, is there for your review. And just a couple of more quick comments here from me before I turn it over to Jordan. The structure of the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board is generally speaking, the mayors and reeves of each of the 10 municipalities sit on the board. And then we have 2 committees now, land use servicing and governance. We did have an advocacy committee, which was dissolved by the previous board. Advocacy generally will now take place at the board level. The interaction between those committees, the board, your municipal administration, and the CMRB administration is a fairly symbiotic relationship. Our job as CMRB is to facilitate the operations of the board, to execute the mandate as delivered to us by the province. And in doing that, we offer whatever support we can to the Wheatland County administration team, to you as councillors, elected officials. We recognize that not every municipality has the same resources. I think that's especially true in Wheatland. And it may not always be top of your priority list either. We do whatever we can to offer support to, for example, ensure that any information that's relevant directly to Wheatland would be pointed out, and we can ensure that you have the opportunity to review that. Often those board packages can get pretty dense and pretty hefty. We can certainly help you navigate some of that. Obviously, you can review it all as you see fit. But Jordan and the team are there to help support your administration and your teams in ensuring you make good use of your time and, frankly, don't spend too much time on CMRB, especially where the information may not be directly relevant to Wheatland County. The question of voting structure on slide 9 comes up a lot. The voting structure is a double majority. 2/3 of members representing at least 2/3 of the population must vote in favor of a motion for it to carry the board. The committees are a simple 50% majority with no population requirement, but the board itself is the 2/3. What that means in practical terms, Calgary being about 84-85% of the population base, must vote in favor of a motion for it to carry. Conversely, of course, if Calgary does not vote in favor, the motion doesn't carry. The flip side of that is if Calgary wants to pass anything, they must attract 6 other votes. So they need 6 friends if they want to pass any motion. So there's a check and balance that goes both ways. That, I guess, from my perspective as chair, is something that has been delivered to us by the province. And I know there's, shall I say, a difference in opinion on the desirability of that particular model. Again, I know that, and there's been lots of discussion on that with the minister, and if the minister ever changes it, we'll adopt the new model, but this is the model that we work within. The last piece then, and I'll just talk about this very briefly and then hand it over to Jordan, who will get into some more of the details of the mechanics of the growth and servicing plans and how the board operates itself. Our objective and our mandate here is to provide benefit to current and future citizens of the region, improve our competitiveness on the global stage, and improve our attractiveness as an investment location, provide some consistency, reduce 690 challenges in between municipalities, and simply for the next million people of the region, cost less to ratepayers and have a lower impact on our environment in doing so. Again, Jordan has some details on exactly how we're going to do that. One of the primary ways is through what we call joint planning areas, identifying preferred growth locations, and target that investment. So I'll hand it over here at this point, and perhaps we'll have Jordan go through his brief presentation, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Jordan?
Thank you very much, Greg, and thanks so much, members of council and GreenLink, for having us here today. On slide 11, I just want to kind of briefly touch on the work that is ongoing for us and has been ongoing since inception in 2018, and that's the interim growth plan and the interim regional evaluation framework. So at the creation of the CMRB, there was a little bit of a gap there because the way the regulation reads is that any statutory plan that is passed after January 1st of 2018 must align with the regional growth plan. However, the regional growth plan, there was at the time, a 3-year window for developing that plan. So it's created a degree of uncertainty for member municipalities, for the development community, for builders, in terms of what if they had built something and it does not align with the growth plan. To address this, the 10 member municipalities came together and decided to create an interim growth plan. And this was then passed on to CAOs, and the CAOs created a RFP to bring on a consultant to help out with that type of work. The original intent was that that work be completed by the end of Q1 of 2018. However, we, through the vagaries of the workload, the consultant just ended up getting hired right towards the end of Q1 of 2018, and I and the team were asked to take on leading the development of the interim growth plan. So the key part of the interim growth plan is that it was there to facilitate development approvals until the interim period is done and the growth plan is approved. So the way it works is there's a set of policies there in the growth plan, and the regional evaluation framework is a mechanism we use to implement those policies. We get applications and then we issue recommendations based on whether or not we feel it meets the requirements of the growth plan, the interim growth plan, I should say. On that note, the policies contained in the interim growth plan are a little vague, and because of that, there's a lot of gray area. We as administration have always looked to that when we've encountered a policy which may or may not meet. If it is a may meet, we look at it from the purpose of the interim growth plan is to facilitate approvals. And so if it is a may meet, then we would always recommend approval of that statutory plan. This will be replaced when the growth plan is approved by the minister, and will be replaced by the growth plan. And one interesting aspect to be noted is that any applications received after May 21st of 2021 must align with the growth plan within a year. Just on to slide 12 here, covered the most of it here. And so we'll just kind of move on to slide 13. Here we can just see the number of IRFs that we have processed to date. There's been 37 applications, 7 challenges, 5 refused, 3 withdrawn and resubmitted, and 2 recommended for refusal by CMRB administration. In terms of the process, we make a recommendation, and then every one of the 10 members has a 28-day period to review our recommendation, and if they agree with it, they don't have to do anything. If the members do not agree with it, then they submit a challenge letter, and then it goes to the board for decision. it is important to note that the board is the final decision-making body in this. Administration's recommendations are just that, a recommendation. Moving on to slide 14, kind of attached to the IRAP and to the REF process, the dispute resolution and appeal bylaw. It was unanimously passed by the board in May of this year, or of last year, I should say, and approved by the minister in September. There's kind of a two-stream process. One, which is relative to REF or IRF decisions that I just kind of briefly outlined there. And in that case, if a decision is challenged by a member, there's mediated dispute resolution first, and if not successful, then an appeal can be made to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. The main reason for this is that there is a measuring stick which the LPRT can take a look at and see whether or not the application did or did not meet the requirements of the growth plan. In all other decisions that are not related to the REF or IRF, there isn't really that measuring stick, so it wouldn't be able to have an independent body review it. So in those cases, so for non-REF decisions, it's a mediated dispute resolution with a final decision going back to the board. Now just kind of moving on to current and into the future, the completed growth and servicing plans. As many of you will know, the work ongoing to that was pretty heavy and continued on past the December 31st deadline outlined in the regulation. The minister had given an extension to June the 1st for us to complete that work. The plans have been sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs for review and approval. One distinction to note is that the servicing plan is not approved by the minister, but just filed with the minister. The major reason for this is because the only reason for the servicing plan to exist is to facilitate the development that is outlined in the growth plan. So without the growth plan, the servicing plan doesn't really have an anchor. Just moving on to the growth plan on slide 16 there. So what is it? Really, it includes policies for planning corridors for recreation, transportation, energy transmission, utilities, intermunicipal transit, coordination of infrastructure planning among participating municipalities, looks at new settlement areas and intensification of existing settlement areas, conserving ag lands, and specific actions to implement the growth plan. And the way that we implement the policies in the growth plan is through the statutory plan review process, back to the IRF and the REF that I spoke about just a few moments ago, that any IDPs, MDPs, ASPs, and ARPs that are regionally significant are vetted through the REF process, and administration will make that recommendation whether or not they do conform with the growth plan policies. Another thing to note just with the growth plan is that it's a living document. It's going to be evaluated and updated to reflect how things are changing. And while there is a requirement to do it within 10 years, we will likely take a 5-year review to see how it is performing against what we were hoping to have. So the growth plan, just moving on to slide 17, it's structured on the board division that Greg touched on. And it was really based, it was a scenario-based planning process based on data from the regions here. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but we had done a variety of studies in terms of water use, in terms of transportation, in terms of existing land use, existing and improved land use, I should say, and all those factors were fed into the model to create 4 scenarios, one of which was business as usual, whereby the consultants just took our current development patterns and added 1 million people to the region based on the population projections that the board had done earlier in its work, and essentially what that would look like, and then proceeded to do another 3 scenarios. So 2 original ones, transit-oriented development and compact, and those 2 were sent out for consultation in round 1 of the public engagement process. And based on the feedback from that and from feedback from others, including the external technical advisory group that you can see listed there on page 17, as well as workshops from the board and municipal administrations, they created a synthesis scenario, and that largely is what you see reflected in the final version of the growth plan that was sent to the minister. Just moving on to slide 18 here. It's existing and approved land uses. So again, this is fundamental to the work that the consultants did, that we worked with all 10-member municipal administrations and created this data set, the we call the deal set. So that is kind of the existing land use pattern in the region, and it allowed the modeling software to identify benefits of the trade-offs between different scenarios. Moving on to slide 20 here, the regional growth structure. So the focus of the plan is growth management, as a growth plan would indicate, and it directs the priority growth areas. It directs growth to the priority growth areas, I should say, of which there are 3 kind of priority growth areas: 1, urban municipalities; 2, the joint planning areas, and I'll speak a little bit more of those in the next slide; and 3, the hamlet growth areas. And there's hamlet growth areas located in each of the 3 rural members of the board. Because Wheatland is a bit of a unique participant in the board that is only a portion of the county, there is 1 hamlet growth area, and that is Cheadle. You can see existing area structure plans can be amended to align with the regional growth plan, but cannot be increase overall population. I'd just like to make note here that any ASPs or statutory plans that were passed prior to January 1st of 2018, or any that were passed through the IGP, as long as they're not amended in a regionally significant way, they are not subject to the requirements of the regional growth plan. Country residential can be developed to a max of 50 lots, either clustered or not clustered. Employment areas should be directed to priority growth areas. However, there are provisions in the regional growth plan to locate them outside of priority growth areas in certain circumstances. And just of note, in the final days of developing the growth plan, the board decided to add Springbank Airport as a separate employment area, just recognizing the uniqueness of that region. Just going to touch briefly on joint planning areas. Wheatland County is not a participant in the 4 joint planning, in any of the 4 joint planning areas. You can see 1 is located Rocky View, Airdrie, and Calgary. 1 is located along the eastern border of Calgary, encompassing Calgary, Rocky View, and a portion of Chestermere. And then we have 2 down south, 1 which is Okotoks and Foothills, and 1 which is Foothills and High River. Really here, the JPAs are areas with a high growth potential and that really require strong intermunicipal cooperation. And the intent of them is really to reduce the intermunicipal conflict and create greater market certainty. It will also give us the ability to collaborate more aggressively on shared service delivery. And creates that framework for that type of collaboration amongst member municipalities. Just moving on to slide 22 here, you can see this really just outlines the land supply and demand, the projected need versus the preferred growth area acres. You can see here there is a wealth of preferred growth area acres throughout the region to accommodate the anticipated regional population growth. Wheatland is a bit of an outlier on this, and the main reason for that is, again, back to the fact that it is only a portion of the county of Wheatland that is incorporated into the CMRB, and so the let's say measurement of that is challenging to do. Move on to slide 23. This speaks a little bit more to the policy strategies contained within the growth plan. So really looking to focus on compact mixed-use place types in the urban areas. Greater infill and redevelopment can improve our environmental, social, and economic outcomes. I kind of already touched on the JPAs, and then traditional rural areas can be reinforced with clustered development, ag conservation, appropriate commercial areas, and priority growth hamlets. I really just want to touch briefly on ag conservation of ag lands. It's a requirement in the regulation. And we took, here in the CMRB, we took a little bit of a different approach to it. In the EMR, Edmonton Metropolitan Region, they originally took an approach of soil quality, and we didn't feel that was appropriate here. So the way we addressed it was to really look at agriculture, in my opinion, the way it should be is that it is an industry and an economic enabler, or an economic driver, I should say. And so we really looked at ag as an industry and included policies that will help, let's say, support that type of industry in our region. And that way it, let's say, supports the conservation of the ag lands by facilitating the continued use of ag lands in the CMR, as opposed to looking at a soil type and then trying to say that land must be conserved or not, as the case may be. Moving on, I'm just going to briefly touch on the servicing plan here. main thing to note is similar development process as with the growth plan. But again, just to reiterate that the servicing plan is linked to the growth plan, and it is there in order to support the development patterns outlined in the growth plan. Moving on to slide 25, kind of the key portion here to note is that priority servicing areas are the priority growth areas. Our region is 9,000 square kilometers or thereabouts. We can't focus on priority servicing area, cannot be the entire region. So really looking at getting the best bang for the buck for collaboration, for driving those, let's say, cost savings and efficiencies that are outlined earlier, and really ensuring that we can, let's say, focus on those areas is key to the success of the servicing plan, and then being able to replicate that throughout the region. You can see here on slide 26, it just kind of outlines the servicing plan priorities: transportation and transit, long-term water strategy, water, wastewater utilities. In there, I just want to make note of that it's a focus on sub-regional servicing, not necessarily region-wide servicing. And a number of dialogue with all 10 member municipalities, it just kind of became very clear that a region-wide servicing approach wouldn't necessarily work, but that sub-regional servicing, including say a subset of the member municipalities, whatever that number is, makes a lot more sense, and that's where the focus will be on the go forward. And then, stormwater management and recreation. So with that, Greg, did you want to touch on anything in closing?
No, I think that's it. Why don't we just turn it over to questions, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for your presentation. We did do somewhat of an overview of the CMRB with our new councillors during our council orientation, but we do appreciate this information. Does anybody have any questions for Chair Clark or CO Copping?
It's a Tom Eichert Division 4. My majority of my division is in the CMRB. And I just got a couple of questions from my ratepayers because I can't answer them. So what's in it for Wheatland County? Like, where's the benefit?
So I'm just going to interject briefly. Fair question, but I think that we might be best served framing those questions to the provincial government that is mandating us into the CMRB versus to the CMRB administration and chair.
Boy,
but that's just...
Question number 2 then, is this is funded right now by the provincial government. That funding will be, I would imagine, would be withdrawn here shortly, and we'll have to belong to a board, so it's going to cost. So how much is it going to cost us to belong to the CMRB?
So I can perhaps briefly, Jordan can give the details. We've been given a diminishing grant over time by the province, and been given an indication, though, that we will continue to receive a fairly substantial grant from the province going forward for baseline operations. The board is currently looking at different scenarios of what funding model may exist going forward to fund anything over and above the baseline. Jordan, perhaps you can certainly could weigh in a little bit on your first question as well. I think it's fair that ultimately it is up to the province to determine. But Jordan, perhaps if you want to answer the funding question, if you feel you've got some thoughts on benefit as well, feel free to share that.
Thanks very much, Chair Clark, and thank you for the question, Councillor. So in terms of the funding, as Chair Clark already mentioned, it has been a diminishing grant. When we first started, it was roughly $2 million, and then has been tapering down. So it was $2 million, $2 million, 1.75, and 1.5 for this past year, 2021-22, with indications from the province that the funding will be kind of settle out at about $1 million per year. The province has indicated that they feel that, yes, they receive benefit from growth management boards, but they are also of the opinion that the member municipalities also benefit from growth management boards, and so there should be a joint contribution to that. In terms of what it will cost, as Chair Clark mentioned, we are currently in discussion with the board to discuss a potential funding formula for any costs which are above and beyond whatever the province is going to fund. So hypothetically, and this is purely hypothetical, if the province were to fund us at $1 million, anything that's above and beyond that, it's really up to the board in terms of what level of effort they want to put in. So, for example, this past year, we're just doing the finalization right now, but it was about $1.6 million, give or take, probably be a little bit less than that. And so hypothetically, if that were to continue on at that level, how would that $600,000 worth of cost be divided up amongst member municipalities? Right now, there is a discussion in terms of whether or not that should be per capita and taxation efforts, a combination of those types of indicators. And that's something I'm looking forward to seeing the board sort out so that we have that in place. However, happily, we have a healthy reserve at this point. And so it is not a question that will become live for either this budget year or very likely the next budget year either. It's not something that will become necessary until, budget 2024 or thereabouts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We appreciate the time that you've spent with our council, and I'm certain if there's any further questions in the future that Deputy Reeve Clausen or I can bring them forward to the board as well, and we'll stay in communication. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Reeve Link. Thanks, Deputy Reeve Clausen, and to all the councillors. Look forward to working with you. Certainly feel free to reach out to myself or Jordan or the admin team at any time. Always happy to connect.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks for everybody's patience. I will recess the meeting until 1 o'clock. We'll reconvene at that time. Thank you.